For my granddaughter's 7th birthday, my son's wealthy in-laws sent her a teddy bear. It looked innocent enough. It was soft and cuddly and had a bright red bow tie, but when Maya hugged it, she suddenly froze. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes and whispered, "Grandpa, it is burning me." I did not hesitate. I took out my pocket knife and sliced that bear open right in the middle of the living room. What I found inside was not cotton stuffing. It was a black box with a cooling fan and a camera lens hidden in the plastic eye. I looked up at my daughter-in-law, and for the first time in years, I saw pure fear in her eyes. I did not know it then, but cutting open that bear was about to bring down an entire empire of lies. Before I tell you how I sent half my family to prison, let me know where you are tuning in from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe nobody messes with a grandfather's love. My name is Otis King. I am 74 years old, and I spent 40 years as a structural engineer in Chicago. I know how to spot a hairline fracture in concrete before the whole building comes down. But on that Saturday afternoon inside my son Marcus's house, I was ignoring the cracks in my own family just to keep the peace. The house was full of people. My daughter-in-law Tiffany had invited her friends, her colleagues, and her neighbors. It was supposed to be a party for Maya, but it looked more like a networking event for Tiffany. I was sitting on a metal folding chair in the corner of the living room. Tiffany had directed me there the moment I walked in. She told me that the velvet armchairs were for the VIP guests, and she did not want my old suit to snag the fabric. I looked down at my suit. It was a 3-piece wool suit I bought in 1980. It was tailored to fit me perfectly. It was clean. It was dignified. But to Tiffany, anything that did not have a designer logo from this season was garbage. I watched Marcus running around the room like a waiter. He was holding a tray of champagne glasses, offering drinks to people who barely looked at him. My son used to be a linebacker in college. He used to walk with his head high. Now he looked like a ghost in his own home. He caught my eye across the room and gave me a weak smile. I just nodded. I could not smile back. I was too busy calculating the load-bearing capacity of his marriage, and the math did not look good. Maya was the only bright spot in that room. She was wearing a pink dress and a plastic tiara. She was running around trying to show everyone her drawings, but the adults were too busy talking about stocks and real estate. She ran over to me and climbed onto my knee. "Grandpa, look what I drew," she said. It was a picture of a tall building. "That is the Sears Tower, baby girl," I said. "I helped pour the foundation for that." "I know, Grandpa," she said. "You are strong like the building." I hugged her tight. She was the only one who saw me. To everyone else, I was just an invisible old black man taking up space. Then the doorbell rang. It was not a guest. It was a delivery driver with a hand truck. He wheeled in a box the size of a refrigerator. The room went quiet. Tiffany clapped her hands and ran to the center of the room. "Oh my goodness," she squealed. "It must be the gift from my parents." Richard and Sylvia felt so terrible they could not make it today, but they wanted to send something special. I stayed in my corner. Richard and Sylvia Harrington never missed an opportunity to show off their wealth, even when they were not present. They probably skipped the party because they did not want to breathe the same air as me. Marcus helped Tiffany open the box. Out came the biggest teddy bear I had ever seen. It was 6 feet tall with golden fur. The guests gasped and started clapping. Someone took out a phone to take a video. "Go on, Maya, give it a hug," Tiffany urged. Maya looked small next to the giant bear. She stepped forward hesitantly. She wrapped her little arms around the bear's stomach. The guests said, "Aw," in unison. But then the smile vanished from Maya's face. She pulled back sharply as if she had touched a hot stove. She rubbed her cheek. "What is wrong, honey?" Tiffany asked, her voice tight. "Smile for the camera." Maya shook her head. "It is hot, Mommy. The bear is hot, and it is making a noise." Tiffany laughed, a nervous, brittle laugh. "Don't be silly, Maya. It is a stuffed animal. It cannot be hot. Go hug it again." "No," Maya said, backing away. "It hurts." The guests started whispering. I stood up. My knees popped, but I moved faster than anyone expected. I walked past the VIP guests and the champagne trays. I walked straight to the bear. "Otis, sit down," Tiffany hissed. "You are ruining the moment." I ignored her. I placed my hand on the bear's stomach. Maya was right. It was not just warm, it was vibrating. There was heat radiating through the synthetic fur. Stuffed animals do not generate heat unless there is something mechanical inside, and mechanical things need power. "Something is running inside this thing," I said. My voice was low, but it carried across the silent room. Tiffany stepped between me and the bear. Her face was flushed. "It is probably just a voice box, Otis. My parents bought the most expensive one. It probably talks or sings. Leave it alone." I looked at the bear's eyes. They were large black plastic buttons, but the light from the chandelier hit the left eye in a strange way. It did not reflect light like plastic. It absorbed it like glass. I leaned in closer. Deep inside that black button I saw a glint, a lens. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my folding knife. It was an old buck knife I had carried since my days on the construction site. "Put that away," Tiffany shrieked. "You are scaring the children." "Airing." Marcus stepped forward. "Dad, what are you doing?" "I am checking the structural integrity," I said. Before anyone could stop me, I grabbed the bear by its ear and plunged the knife into its chest. The fabric ripped with a loud tearing sound. Stuffing exploded into the air like snow. The guests screamed. Tiffany lunged at me, grabbing my arm. "Stop it, you crazy old man," she yelled. "That cost $1,000. I shook her off with one arm. "I am 74, but I spent my life lifting steel beams." She bounced off me like a rubber ball. I reached into the hole I had made in the bear's chest. My hand hit something hard and metal. It was hot to the touch. I pulled it out. It was not a voice box. It was a black aluminum box about the size of a brick. There was a small cooling fan spinning on the side which explained the humming noise and the heat. Wires ran from the box up to the bear's head. I looked at the box. I recognized the components. This was a high-powered transmitter, and on the side was a slot with a memory card. "What is that?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling. I looked at Tiffany. She was not looking at the box. She was looking at the camera lens in the bear's eye. She was pale. "This is not a toy," I said, holding up the black box. "This is a surveillance unit, and it is running hot, which means it is transmitting data right now." I reached for the memory card. Tiffany screamed, "Do not touch it." She threw herself at me, clawing at my hand. She did not care about the bear anymore. She cared about that card. She dug her fake nails into my wrist, drawing blood. "Give it to me," she screamed. "It is mine." I pushed her back gently but firmly. She stumbled and fell onto the pile of white stuffing. I pulled the memory card out. The fan on the black box stopped whirring. The red light on the side blinked out. The room was deadly silent. Everyone was looking at Tiffany. She was sitting on the floor, breathing hard, her hair messy. She looked at the camera lens in the dead bear's eye, and then she looked at me. "You have no idea what you just did," she whispered. I looked at the memory card in my hand. It was small, but it felt heavy. "I think I have a pretty good idea," I said. "Your parents did not send a gift, Tiffany. They sent a spy." I put the card in my pocket. Marcus looked from me to his wife. He looked confused and scared. "Dad, give her the card," Marcus said. "Let's just resolve this peacefully." I looked at my son. He was still trying to negotiate with terrorists. "No, son," I said. "The peace is over." I turned around and walked toward the door. I needed to go to my basement. I needed my tools. I needed to see what was on this card. "Where are you going?" Tiffany screamed from the floor. "You cannot leave with that." I stopped at the door and looked back. "I am going to do what I do best, Tiffany. I am going to inspect the foundation, and if I find rot, I am going to tear the whole house down." I walked out of the party, leaving the silence behind me. Maya ran to the window and waved. I waved back. I would protect her, even if I had to destroy everything else to do it. That was the beginning. But what I found on that card was worse than just a camera. It was a recording of a conversation that happened 2 weeks ago, a conversation that proved my life was in danger. My basement is not a storage room for old holiday decorations. It is a sanctuary of precision. The walls are lined with pegboards where every wrench, caliper, and screwdriver hangs in its designated outline. In the center sits my workbench, a heavy slab of oak I salvaged from a demolition site in 1992. Under the harsh white light of my magnifying lamp, I placed the black box I had ripped from the bear's chest. I sat down on my stool and took a deep breath. The silence of my house usually brought me peace, but tonight it felt heavy, like the pressure in the air before a tornado touches down. I put on my reading glasses and picked up a set of jeweler's screwdrivers. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I carefully removed the casing of the black box. The circuitry inside was impressive, and that terrified me. This was not a cheap baby monitor you buy at a discount store. The soldering was professional. The transmitter had a range that could reach a receiver blocks away. And the battery pack was designed for long-term endurance. This was military-grade surveillance equipment disguised as a child's toy. I took the memory card I had snatched from Tiffany and slid it into my computer's card reader. My hands were steady. They have been steady for 74 years through wars and construction accidents. They did not shake now, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. The computer chimed. A folder appeared on the screen. It was labeled simply DCIM. I opened it. There were dozens of video files. Most of them were recent timestamped from today. I saw the shaky footage of the party from the bear's perspective. I saw Maya's terrified face up close. I saw the blur of motion when I cut the bear open, but then I scrolled down. There were files from 2 weeks ago. My blood ran cold. The bear had not been shipped from the store yesterday. It had been in their possession for weeks. They had tested it. I clicked on an audio file dated 14 days ago. I put on my heavy noise-canceling headphones and turned the volume up. At first there was just static, then the sound of fabric rustling, then a voice cut through the white noise. It was sharp nasally and dripping with arrogance. It was Sylvia, Tiffany's mother. "Is it recording?" she asked. "Yes, Mom, the light is on," Tiffany's voice replied. "The quality is amazing. I can hear you breathing," good Sylvia said. Her voice got closer to the microphone. "Now listen to me. We do not have much time. Richard says the creditors are calling every hour. We need liquid assets, Tiffany. We need them now." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the waveform on the screen. I knew the Harringtons were flashy, but I assumed they were just tacky, not broke. "I know, Mom," Tiffany sighed. "But the old man is stubborn. He won't sell the brownstone. He says he wants to keep it in the family for Maya." "He is 74, Sylvia scoffed. "He is a relic. He is sitting on $4 million of prime real estate, and he is letting it rot. We need to get him declared incompetent. We need that power of attorney." I gritted my teeth. Incompetent. They looked at me and saw a senile old fool. They did not see the man who calculated the wind load for the Hancock Center. "But Marcus won't sign off on it," Tiffany said. "He is afraid of his dad. He has this pathetic loyalty to him." Sylvia laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. "Marcus will do what he is told. He is weak, Tiffany. That is why you married him. But if he won't do it, we use the girl." I froze. My hand hovered over the pause button. "Maya?" Tiffany asked. "Yes," Sylvia said. "The old man is obsessed with her. She is his only soft spot. If Maya says she is scared of him, if she says he forgets things or gets violent, the court will listen. We need to coach her." "Coach her," Tiffany repeated slowly. "We need to know where he keeps the deed and the cash." Sylvia continued. "He does not trust banks. He has a safe in that basement. Maya is the only one he lets down there." I felt a wave of nausea. They were talking about my granddaughter like she was a tool, a lockpick to break into my life. "How do we get Maya to say the password for the safe?" Sylvia asked. "Did she hear him say it?" "No," Tiffany said. "But I am working on it. I am working on her." I clicked on the next file. It was dated a few days later. The background noise was different. It sounded like a car. "Mommy, why do I have to ignore Grandpa?" Maya's small voice asked. "Because he is sick, honey," Tiffany's voice said. It was smooth fake, the voice of a snake charming a bird. "Grandpa is very sick in his head. He might hurt you." "He never hurt me," Maya said. "He doesn't mean to?" Tiffany lied. "But he is old and dirty. Did you smell him?" "He smells like old chemicals and rust. That is the smell of a bad man." My eyes burned. "I shower every day." The smell she was talking about was the smell of flux and oil, the smell of hard work. She was teaching my granddaughter to be disgusted by me. "And listen," Tiffany continued. "If you see Grandpa type numbers into the metal box in the basement, you have to tell Mommy. It is a game. If you tell Mommy the numbers, I will buy you a pony. But you cannot tell Grandpa. If you tell Grandpa, he will yell at you." I slammed my fist onto the oak desk. The tools on the pegboard rattled. This was not just greed. This was psychological abuse. They were poisoning Maya's mind, turning her love for me into fear, all for the combination to a safe that held deeds they did not earn. I saved every file. I copied them to 3 different hard drives. I encrypted them. I was not just an engineer. I was a man who built things to last, and I was building a case that would bury them. Suddenly, the silence of the basement was shattered by the ringing of my cell phone. It buzzed violently against the wood of the desk. The screen flashed, "Marcus." I stared at it. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I wanted to stay in the dark with the truth, but I knew I had to answer. I picked up the phone and swiped accept. I did not say hello. Dad Marcus's voice exploded through the speaker. "Are you insane?" I listened to his breathing. It was ragged. He was panicking. "You ruined everything," Marcus yelled. "Do you have any idea how much that gift cost? Do you know who the Harringtons are? You pulled a knife in front of investors. Tiffany is in the bathroom crying her eyes out. She says she doesn't feel safe with you around Maya anymore." "She is crying," I said calmly. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was flat, devoid of the warmth I usually reserved for my son. "Yes, she is crying," Marcus screamed. "You embarrassed her. You embarrassed me. I need you to get back here right now and apologize. You need to pay for the bear, and you need to beg her forgiveness if you ever want to see your granddaughter again." That was the threat. The leverage. They always used Maya. "Marcus," I said. What he snapped. "Did you know?" I asked. "Know what he demanded. Did you know the bear was recording us?" There was a pause, a short, hesitant silence. "Don't be ridiculous, Dad. It is a toy. Tiffany said it has a voice command feature. You are just being paranoid. You are old and you don't understand technology." I looked at the black box on my desk. I looked at the cooling fan and the memory card reader. "I understand technology better than you understand your wife," I said. "Stop it," Marcus shouted. "I am sick of this. I am sick of you acting like you are better than everyone. Tiffany is right. Maybe you are losing it. Maybe the court needs to step in." "The court," I repeated. "Yes," Marcus said. "We are going to file for a competency hearing, Dad. For your own good. We can't let you live alone in that big house with dangerous tools if you are going to start stabbing stuffed animals." I closed my eyes. It was the script. He was reading from the script Sylvia had written. He was not my son anymore. He was their mouthpiece. "Dad, are you listening to me?" Marcus asked. "Bring the memory card back, now, or I call the police and report a theft." I looked at the screen of my computer. The file transfer was complete. The evidence was secure. "You do what you have to do, Marcus," I said. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice rising in pitch. "It means I'm not coming back," I said. "And I am not apologizing. Dad, if you hang up, I swear to God you won't see Maya until you are 90. I looked at the picture of Maya I had taped to my toolbox. She was smiling, holding a wrench I had given her. "I love you, son," I said, "but you picked the wrong side." I ended the call. I did not sit there and weep. I did not wonder where I went wrong raising him. I went into problem-solving mode. I opened my safe. It was a vintage Diebold floor safe cemented into the foundation. I spun the dial. The tumblers clicked into place, a sound I loved. I pulled the heavy steel door open. Inside were the deeds to the brownstone, the patent documents for the structural dampeners I invented in the 80s, and a ledger of bonds I had been buying for 30 years. But that was not what I needed right now. I reached to the back of the safe and pulled out a blue folder. It was dusty. I had not touched it in years. It contained the contact information for people I used to work with. Not the architects or the city planners. The other guys, the union fixers, the private investigators who cleared job sites of liability, the lawyers who sued cities and won. I opened the folder and ran my finger down the list until I found a name. Saul Goodman was a TV character. My guy was named Miller, and Miller was a shark who ate sharks. I picked up the landline phone on my desk. It was an old rotary phone, untraceable and reliable. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. "Yeah," a gruff voice answered. "Miller," I said. "It is Otis King." There was a pause, then a chuckle. "The ghost of Chicago construction." "I thought you were dead." "Otis." "Not yet," I said. "But I have a demolition job." "A building?" Miller asked. "No," I said, looking at the black spy box on my desk. "A family." I hung up the phone. Above me in the kitchen I heard the floorboards creak. It was just the house settling, but it sounded like footsteps. The war had started, and I had the high ground. 3 days after I declared war in my basement, my phone rang again. It was Tiffany. Her voice was different this time. Gone was the screeching harpy who fought me for a teddy bear. In her place was a sweet, solicitous daughter-in-law. She told me she wanted to make amends. She said I was right to be upset about the bear and that it was just a misunderstanding. She invited me to dinner. Just family. No cameras, no parties, just a home-cooked meal to reset the foundation of our relationship. I knew it was a trap. You do not spend 40 years in construction without learning how to spot a sinkhole covered with fresh straw. But I also knew that if I refused, I would be playing right into their narrative. They needed me to be the angry, unreasonable old man. If I stayed away, I was hostile. If I came, I was walking into the lion's den. I chose the den. At least there I could look the beast in the eye. I dressed carefully. I wore my charcoal suit and polished my shoes until they reflected the ceiling lights. Appearance is armor. If they wanted to paint me as a senile derelict, I would show up looking like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. When I arrived at Marcus's house, the atmosphere was suffocating. The air smelled of expensive candles and hidden agendas. Marcus opened the door. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he wouldn't meet my gaze. He took my coat and muttered a hello that barely made it past his lips. He was vibrating with anxiety. My son was a poor liar, and tonight he looked like a man holding a grenade with the pin pulled. Tiffany emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. It was a performance. She was playing the role of the wholesome housewife. She hugged me. Her body was stiff, and she smelled of lavender and ambition. "I am so glad you came, Dad," she said. "We really need to talk." We sat down in the dining room. The table was set with their best china. Crystal glasses shimmered under the chandelier. It was a setting for a celebration, but it felt like a funeral. Dinner was served. Butternut squash soup. It was thick and orange and swirled with heavy cream. Tiffany ladled it out herself. I watched her hands. They were steady. Too steady. So Tiffany started breaking the silence. "We have been really worried about you lately." I picked up my spoon, but I did not eat. I just stirred the soup, watching the steam rise. Worried, I asked, "Why is that?" "Well, Marcus and I were talking about the incident last week," Tiffany said. "You know, with the gas stove." I stopped stirring. "What gas stove?" Tiffany looked at Marcus, then back at me with wide, concerned eyes. "Dad, don't you remember? The neighbors called us. You left the burners on all night. The whole street smelled like gas. The fire department had to break your door down." I stared at her. My blood pressure began to rise, but I kept my face like stone. "That never happened, Tiffany. I have an electric stove. I switched from gas in 2005 after the remodel." Tiffany sighed, a long, tragic sound. "See, Marcus," she whispered. "He doesn't remember. He thinks he has an electric stove. Dad, you moved back to gas last year. You said the electric one didn't heat up fast enough. You really don't remember the fireman." I looked at Marcus. He was staring at his soup spoon, his knuckles white. "Marcus," I said, my voice low, "do I have a gas stove?" Marcus looked up. His eyes were wet. "Dad, the police report said you were confused. They said they found you wandering in the park in your pajamas thinking it was a work day. That was Tuesday." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was not just a lie. This was a coordinated gaslighting campaign. They were rewriting reality. They were planting seeds of doubt, not just in my mind, but in the official record. If they called the police and filed false reports, then there was a paper trail documenting my decline. "I was not wandering in the park on Tuesday," I said clearly. "On Tuesday, I was at the library researching municipal bonds. I have the receipt for the parking garage." Tiffany reached across the table and patted my hand. Her skin felt cold. "Oh, Dad, that was 3 years ago. You haven't driven in months. We took your keys, remember?" I looked at the car keys sitting next to my plate, the keys I had just used to drive here. "I drove here tonight, Tiffany," I said. She smiled a sad, pitying smile. "No, Dad. Marcus picked you up. You are confused again." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was terrifying. If I argued, I looked agitated. If I stayed silent, I looked compliant. It was a perfect structural trap. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. "Let's just eat," Tiffany said soothingly. "You need your strength. The soup will make you feel better." I looked down at the orange liquid. I lifted the spoon to my lips. The smell hit me. It was subtle. Most people would have missed it. It was hidden under the strong scent of nutmeg and roasted squash. But I spent 20 years inspecting chemical plants. I know the smell of solvents and sedatives. There was a metallic, acrid edge to the steam. It smelled like chalk and old batteries, benzodiazepine, or maybe a crushed sleeping pill. I looked at Tiffany. She was watching me. She wasn't eating. She was waiting. I lowered the spoon. "It is a little hot," I said. Marcus was eating mechanically, shoveling the food into his mouth as if he wanted to get this over with. "Eat up," Dad, Tiffany urged. "It is your favorite." "I need some pepper," I said. "I will get it," Tiffany said, starting to rise. "No," I said. "I have some in my pocket. I always carry my own cayenne." I reached into my jacket pocket. At the same moment, I kicked Marcus's leg under the table. Not hard, but enough to make him jump. "Ouch!" Marcus yelled, dropping his spoon. "What happened?" Tiffany asked, turning to him. "I think a bug bit me," Marcus said, rubbing his shin. In that split second while their eyes were on Marcus, I moved. Tiffany's prize Persian cat Duchess had been winding around my legs begging for food. I took my bowl and the saucer on the floor that had been set out for the cat. The switch took less than 2 seconds. I poured the contents of my bowl into the cat's dish and scooped a generous portion of the cat's wet food, which looked surprisingly like the soup chunks, into a napkin in my lap. Then I pretended to wipe my mouth. When Tiffany turned back, I was swallowing. "Delicious," I said. Tiffany relaxed. Her shoulders dropped an inch. She smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I had seen all night. It was the smile of a hunter who just heard the trap snap shut. "I am so glad you like it," she said. "So," Dad, Marcus said, his voice shaking. "We have been looking at some brochures. There is a place called Golden Horizons. It is a community for people who need a little extra help." I watched the cat. Duchess was lapping up the soup greedily. "A nursing home," I asked. "Assisted living," Tiffany corrected. "It is like a resort. They have activities, and doctors, and 24-hour security so you won't wander off again." I leaned back in my chair. I felt the weight of the napkin in my lap. "And what about my house?" I asked. "The brownstone." "Well," Tiffany said, pouring herself more wine, "we would have to sell it, obviously, to pay for your care. Golden Horizons is very expensive. But don't worry, as your power of attorney Marcus would handle all the stress of the sale. You wouldn't have to lift a finger." I watched the cat. Duchess stopped eating. She sat up and shook her head. Then she meowed a low, confused sound. "And the money?" I asked. "The $4 million the house is worth. It goes into a trust," Tiffany said. "For your care. And whatever is left, well, it stays in the family." Duchess tried to walk away. Her back legs gave out. She stumbled sideways and hit the leg of the table. "What is wrong with the cat?" Marcus asked. Duchess let out a yowl and collapsed onto the rug. Her eyes were open but glazed. Her breathing was shallow and slow. She looked like a rag doll thrown on the floor. "Oh my God!" Tiffany screamed, dropping her fork. "Duchess!" She ran to the cat. Marcus stood up, knocking his chair over. "Is she choking?" Marcus yelled. I stayed seated. I watched them panic. "She isn't choking," I said calmly. "She is stoned." Tiffany looked up at me, cradling the limp cat in her arms. "What?" I pointed at the empty soup bowl on the floor. "I gave her my soup," I said. "And judging by how fast she went down, I would say you crushed about 10 milligrams of Valium in there. Maybe Xanax. That is a heavy dose for a 180-pound man, Tiffany. For a 10-pound cat, it is practically a coma." Tiffany's face went white, whiter than the tablecloth. She looked from the cat to me, and I saw the terror of exposure. You poisoned my cat," she stammered. "No, Tiffany," I said, standing up. "You poisoned your cat. You meant to poison me. You wanted me groggy, didn't you? You wanted me stumbling and slurring my words so when the police arrived or the doctors came, I would look exactly like the senile old man you described." Marcus looked at the soup bowl on the table, the one I was supposed to have eaten. Then he looked at his wife. Tiffany, Marcus whispered, "Did you put something in the soup?" "Shut up," Marcus, Tiffany hissed. "He is lying. He is crazy. Look what he did to Duchess." I buttoned my suit jacket. I walked over to where Tiffany was kneeling. I looked down at her. "The cat will be fine in a few hours," I said. Her metabolism is fast. But you, Tiffany, you are in trouble. Attempted poisoning is a felony, and unlike your stories about gas stoves and wandering in the park, this actually happened. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I held it up. The screen showed a recording app running. I recorded the whole dinner. I said, every lie about the stove, every lie about the police, and the moment the cat ate the soup. Give me that phone, Tiffany screamed, lunging at me with one hand while holding the cat with the other. I stepped back easily. She fell forward onto her face. I am leaving now, I said. Do not follow me. Do not come to my house. If I see either of you on my property, I will not call the police. I will call the structural engineers, and we will dismantle your lives brick by brick. I walked to the front door. Marcus was standing there paralyzed. He looked like a man watching his house burn down and realizing he was the one who lit the match. Dad, Marcus pleaded. Wait. I opened the door. The night air was cool and clean. It smelled of rain and freedom. It didn't smell like butternut squash and betrayal. The soup was delicious, Tiffany, I called back without turning around. But it had a little too much chemical aftertaste. You should check your recipe. I slammed the door behind me. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I walked to my car, my keys in my hand. I wasn't confused. I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was going. I was going to the medical board. I was going to the bank. And then I was going to finish what I started. They wanted a fight. They wanted to play dirty. Well, they forgot one thing. I grew up in the mud, and I know how to bury things so they never come back up. I did not have to wait long for their next move. I knew that after the dinner party disaster, they would not retreat. They would regroup and attack with heavier artillery. I just did not expect them to bring a mercenary in a white coat. The next morning, I was in my living room polishing my collection of vintage hand planes. Woodworking requires patience and precision. Two things my family seemed to lack entirely. The sun was streaming through the bay windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a peaceful Saturday, the kind of day a retired man should spend listening to jazz and drinking black coffee. Then I heard the key turn in the lock. Only two people had a key to my brownstone, me and Marcus. The heavy oak door swung open. Marcus walked in, but he was not alone. Behind him marched the Harringtons, Richard and Sylvia, looking like they were attending a funeral for someone they didn't like. And behind them was a stranger. A man in his 40s, balding, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a stethoscope around his neck like a prop in a bad play. Dad Marcus said, his voice tight, "We need to talk." I did not stand up. I kept my cloth moving in small circles on the iron sole of the hand plane. "I thought we talked last night," I said. "I told you not to come here." Richard Harrington stepped forward. He was a tall man who wore expensive suits to distract you from his cheap soul. He smoothed his silk tie and gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Otis, please," Richard said. His voice was smooth, practiced. "We are not here to fight. We are here because we love you. We are here for an intervention." I stopped polishing. I looked at them. An intervention. That is a word people use when they want to bully you into submission but want to feel like heroes while doing it. I looked at the stranger. "And who is this?" I asked. "Is he the caterer?" The man cleared his throat nervously. "No, Mr. King. I am Dr. Aris. I am a specialist in geriatric neurology." "I see," I said. "And do you make house calls for patients you have never met, Dr. Aris? Or is this a special service for families who want to steal an inheritance?" Richard's smile faltered. "Otis, stop it. Dr. Aris is a friend of the family. He has been reviewing your case." "My case," I repeated. "I didn't know I had a case." Marcus stepped forward. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and he was wringing his hands. "Dad, please listen. Tiffany told us about the soup, about the cat, about how you thought the electric stove was gas." I looked at my son. He was drowning in their lies, and he was grabbing onto me to save himself, not realizing he was pulling me down with him. "Son," I said gently, "there was no gas stove. The cat was drugged by your wife. You know this." Sylvia let out a dramatic gasp. She clutched her pearls. "Oh, Marcus, look at him. It is worse than we thought. Paranoia. Delusions of persecution. It is heartbreaking." Dr. Aris stepped forward and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a thick file folder. He laid it on my coffee table right next to my hand plane. "Mr. King, He began, his tone condescendingly soft. Based on the accounts provided by your family and my review of your recent medical history, the signs are unmistakable. You are exhibiting stage 3 Alzheimer's. The confusion about appliances, the aggression toward inanimate objects like the teddy bear, the belief that your family is conspiring against you, these are classic symptoms. I looked at the file. It was thick. It looked official. I picked it up. Inside there were charts. There were notes dated back 6 months. There were prescriptions I had never taken. This is very thorough, I said, flipping through the pages. According to this, I visited your clinic 3 times last month. Yes, Dr. Aris said quickly. You probably don't remember. That is part of the disease. Memory gaps are very common. I looked at the dates. On 2 of those dates, I was in Florida inspecting a condo development for an old friend. I had the plane tickets in my desk drawer, but I did not say that. I wanted to see how far they would go, so I asked, closing the file. What is the cure? There is no cure, Otis Richard said solemnly. But there is management. We can't let you live here alone anymore. It is dangerous. You could burn the house down. You could hurt yourself. Or Maya. The mention of Maya made my grip on the handplane tighten. So, what do you propose? I asked. Sylvia stepped in, her voice dripping with fake honey. We found a wonderful facility, Otis. Golden Horizons. They have a memory care unit. You will be safe there. And Marcus will take legal guardianship of your estate. He will make sure the bills are paid and the house is managed. Managed, I said. You mean sold? Richard shrugged. Well, assets need to be liquidated to pay for your care. It is expensive, Otis. But you have significant equity in this building. It should cover you for a few years. I looked at Marcus. He was staring at the floor. Marcus, I said. Look at me. He looked up. There were tears in his eyes. Do you believe this? I asked. Do you believe I am crazy, Dad? Marcus whispered. You poisoned the cat. You carry a knife. You talk about structural engineers destroying lives. You are not yourself. I just want you to be safe. He believed it. Or he wanted to believe it because the truth that his wife was a monster and his in-laws were thieves was too painful to face. I stood up. My knees popped, but I stood straight. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall. I still have the shoulders of a man who swung a sledgehammer for a living. Dr. Aris took a step back. Sit down, Mr. King, please, the doctor said, his voice trembling slightly. Agitation is another symptom. I ignored him. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. I walked over to Dr. Aris. He smelled of stale tobacco and fear. I would like to see your medical license, I said. The room went silent. Excuse me, Dr. Aris said. If you are diagnosing me, I said, my voice calm and cold, then you are my doctor. And as a patient, I have the right to verify your credentials. Show me your ID. He hesitated. He looked at Richard. Richard nodded sharply. Dr. Aris reached into his wallet and pulled out a card. He held it up, his hand shaking just a little. I held my phone up. I took a clear, high-resolution photo of the card. Then I took a photo of his face. Then I took a photo of the open file on the table with the fake dates. What are you doing? Richard demanded. I am gathering evidence, I said. I tapped the screen of my phone. Dr. Aris, I see you are licensed in the state. That is good, because tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I am going to walk into the state medical board office. I am going to show them this file. I am going to show them my plane tickets that prove I was out of state on the days you claim you treated me. Dr. Aris's face went pale. Listen, Mr. King, there might be a clerical error. I cut him off. Falsifying medical records to facilitate a fraudulent guardianship is a felony, doctor. It is also grounds for immediate revocation of your license. You won't just lose your job, you will go to prison. And you won't go to a nice prison. You will go to the one where they don't like doctors who abuse old people. The doctor snatched his ID back. He shoved it into his pocket. He looked at Richard with wild panic in his eyes. You told me he was senile, Dr. Aris hissed at Richard. You told me he wouldn't know what day it was. He is having a moment of clarity, Sylvia said quickly. It happens. I laughed. It was a dry, hard sound. A moment of clarity. No, Sylvia. I have had 74 years of clarity, and right now I see everything. I turned back to the doctor. You have 10 seconds to get out of my house, I said. If you are still here in 11 seconds, I am calling the police and reporting a home invasion." Dr. Harris did not wait for permission from the Harringtons. He grabbed his briefcase. He grabbed the file on the table. "Leave the file," I barked. He froze. "That is my medical record," I said. "It belongs to me." "Leave it." He dropped the file like it was burning his fingers. He turned and ran out the door. We heard his car start outside and peel away. The silence in the room was heavy. Marcus looked like he was about to vomit. Sylvia was fanning herself with her hand. But Richard did not look scared. He looked angry. The mask was gone. The fake concern was gone. He looked at me with pure hatred. "You think you are smart, old man," Richard said, stepping closer to me. "You think because you scared off a cheap doctor you have won. I didn't win anything I said. I just inspected the foundation and found a crack." Richard sneered. "You are fighting a war you can't win. We have lawyers, we have judges, we have time. You have nothing. You are an old black man in a city that doesn't care about you. We will find another doctor. We will find 10 doctors. We will bury you in paperwork until you die in this house," Richard Marcus said weakly. "Don't talk to him like that." "Shut up, Marcus," Richard snapped. He didn't even look at my son. He kept his eyes on me. "We are trying to help you, Marcus," Richard continued. "We are trying to save you from financial ruin. But your father is too selfish to help his own family." I looked at Richard. I saw the desperation behind his anger. He wasn't doing this for power. He was doing it because he was drowning. The report from the private investigator had told me everything. He was leveraged to the hilt. If he didn't get my money, the sharks were coming for him. "Get out," I said. Richard buttoned his jacket. He regained his composure. He smoothed his hair. "We are leaving," he said. "But this isn't over. Don't fight fate, Otis. We only want what is best for you." He took Sylvia's arm. They walked to the door. Marcus lingered. He looked at me, then at the door. "Dad," he said. "Go," I said. I couldn't look at him. "Go with your owners, Marcus." Marcus flinched as if I had slapped him. He turned and followed them out. I closed the door. I locked it. I threw the deadbolt. I walked back to the coffee table. I picked up the fake medical file. I sat down on my sofa. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear. From rage. They thought they could write me off. They thought they could erase my mind with a pen stroke. They brought a doctor into my sanctuary to declare me obsolete. I opened the file again. I looked at the lies. Every page was an insult. Every fake diagnosis was a weapon aimed at my freedom. I took out my phone and dialed Miller, my private investigator. "Miller," I said when he answered. "Yeah, Otis. I need you to dig deeper on a Dr. Harris. I want to know who he owes money to. I want to know who he is sleeping with. I want to know what he eats for breakfast." "He messed up?" Miller asked. "He tried to bury me," I said. I hung up. I looked around my empty house. It was quiet again, but it was not peaceful. I went to the fireplace. I tossed the fake medical file onto the logs. I struck a match and watched the paper catch fire. I watched the lies curl up and turn to ash. Richard said not to fight fate. He was wrong. I am the fate. And I was coming for them. Tuesday afternoon used to be the highlight of my week. It was the day I picked Maya up from school. We had a ritual. I would park my Buick in the same spot under the oak tree. I would walk to the gate. She would run out her backpack bouncing against her spine, and she would yell "Grandpa" before she even cleared the door. We would go to the park, or we would go to the hardware store where I would teach her the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead. It was the only time during the week when I felt like the world made sense. But this Tuesday, the air felt different. It was heavy. The sky was a bruised shade of gray, and the humidity made my joints ache. I pulled into the school parking lot, and I felt a knot of tension in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that the Harringtons and their fake doctor were just noise. I had the truth on my side. I got out of the car. I adjusted my hat. I walked toward the gate. Usually the security guard, a man named Jenkins, would wave at me. We would talk about the Bears game or the weather. Jenkins was a good man. He had worked that gate for 10 years. Today Jenkins did not wave. He stepped out of his booth and stood in the middle of the sidewalk. He was not smiling. He held his hand up, palm out. "Mr. King," he said. His voice was flat. "You need to stop right there." I slowed down, but I kept walking. "Jenkins," I said. "It is Tuesday. I am here for Maya." "You can't come any closer," Mr. King, Jenkins said. He put his hand on his belt. He wasn't reaching for a weapon, but the gesture was clear. He was establishing authority. I stopped. I was 10 feet away from the gate where the children were starting to pour out. "What is going on, Jenkins?" I asked. Jenkins looked down at his boots, then back at me. He looked ashamed, but he also looked determined. "The principal got a fax this morning, Mr. King, from the family court." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me across the invisible line he had drawn on the concrete. I took the paper. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I unfolded the document. It was a temporary restraining order, an ex parte order. That meant a judge had signed it without even hearing my side of the story. I read the words. Petitioner Tiffany King. Respondent Otis King. Allegations: emotional instability, erratic behavior, threats of violence, imminent danger to the minor child. I looked up at Jenkins. Imminent danger. I repeated. "Do you believe this, Jenkins? You have watched me pick her up for 2 years. Have I ever been a danger?" Jenkins sighed. "It doesn't matter what I believe, Mr. King. It is a court order. If you step onto school property, I have to call the police, and they will arrest you. Please don't make me do that." I looked past him. The school doors opened. A flood of children in uniforms came running out screaming and laughing. I scanned the crowd. I looked for the pink backpack. I looked for the curly hair. Then I saw her. Maya was standing by the brick wall near the office. She was not running. She was standing perfectly still. A teacher I did not recognize had a hand on her shoulder holding her in place. Maya saw me. Her face lit up for a split second. She took a step forward. "Grandpa," she shouted. The teacher tightened her grip. I saw the teacher lean down and whisper something in Maya's ear. Maya stopped. The light in her face died. She looked confused. She looked scared. I took a step forward. My instinct was to rush the gate. My instinct was to tear that iron fence down with my bare hands and grab my granddaughter. Mr. King Jenkins warned, stepping in front of me. "Don't do it." I stopped. I gripped the iron bars of the fence. The metal was cold and rough against my palms. "Maya," I called out. "It is okay, baby. Grandpa is here." Maya looked at me through the bars. We were 30 feet apart, but it felt like an ocean. She looked down at her shoes. She looked small. Too small for the weight she was carrying. Then she did something that stopped my heart. She reached up to wipe a tear from her cheek. As she raised her arm, the sleeve of her cardigan slid down. My vision is excellent. I have spent my life reading blueprints with lines thin as a hair. I saw her arm clearly. On the inside of her upper arm, just above the elbow, there were 2 marks. They were oval-shaped. They were dark purple, turning yellow at the edges. I froze. I knew that mark. I had seen it before on construction sites when men got pinched between heavy machinery. But this wasn't machinery. The spacing was perfect. One mark was the size of a thumb. The other was the size of a finger. It was a pinch mark. A forceful, deliberate pinch, meant to cause maximum pain in a sensitive area where it could be hidden by clothes. I stared at the bruise. It was fresh, maybe 2 days old. The audio recording from the teddy bear played in my head. "I am working on her," Tiffany had said. "We need to coach her." The pieces slammed together in my mind with the force of a wrecking ball. Maya wasn't just scared of me. She was being tortured. Tiffany was hurting her physically to make her memorize the lies. That pinch was the price of a wrong answer. That pinch was the conditioning tool. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage flooded my system. It started in my feet and shot up to my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump the fence and break the teacher's arm for holding her. I wanted to drive my car through the school doors. But I didn't. If I screamed now, if I acted crazy now, Jenkins would call the cops. They would arrest me for violating the order. Tiffany would win. She would point to my anger and say, "See, I told you he is violent." I had to be concrete. I had to be steel. I had to absorb the shock and not crack. I looked at Maya. I needed her to know I saw her. I raised my hand. I made a fist and then extended my pinky and my thumb. The sign for a phone. Then I pointed to my heart. Maya saw it. She sniffled. She gave a tiny nod. Mr. King Jenkins said, his hand moving to his radio, "You need to leave. Now." I looked at Jenkins. My eyes were dry. My face was a mask of calm. "I am leaving Jenkins," I said. My voice was so low it sounded like gravel grinding together. "But you remember this day. You remember you stopped the only person who could save that little girl. I turned around. Every step back to the car was a physical effort. My body wanted to fight, but my brain was driving. I got into my Buick. I started the engine. I did not look back at the school. I couldn't. If I looked back and saw her crying, I would lose control. I drove. I did not drive home. I did not drive to the lawyer's office. Lawyers act too slow. Lawyers file motions and wait for hearings. I didn't have time for hearings. My granddaughter had bruises on her arm. I drove to the industrial district, to the part of town where the warehouses have barbed wire on the roofs and the businesses don't have signs. I pulled up in front of a brick building that used to be a meatpacking plant. The sign on the door said, Miller Consulting. I walked in. The office smelled of stale coffee, cigarette smoke, and bad decisions. Miller was sitting behind a metal desk that was buried under stacks of paper. He was a large man with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite and then dropped on the sidewalk. He looked up as I walked in. He saw my face. He put down his sandwich. You look like you're ready to kill someone, Otis Miller said. I sat down. I didn't take off my hat. I need a job done, Miller, I said. And I need it done dirty. Miller leaned back. The chair groaned. You know I don't do wet work, Otis. I don't want you to hurt anyone, I said. I want you to destroy them. I pulled the restraining order out of my pocket and threw it on the desk. They took my granddaughter, I said. And they are hurting her. I saw the bruises, Miller. Tiffany is pinching her to make her lie. Miller picked up the paper. He read it. His expression didn't change. He had seen everything. So what do you want, Miller asked. You want surveillance. You want me to tail the wife. No, I said. I already know what the wife is doing. She is a puppet. I want the puppet masters. I leaned forward. I want you to go to the Harringtons' house. I want you to go to their office. I want you to go to the country club they can't afford anymore. I want you to dig through their trash. I want you to clone their phones. I want you to find out who they owe money to. I want to know why they are so desperate for my $4 million that they would torture a 7-year-old girl. Miller nodded slowly. That is a deep dive, Otis. It is going to cost you. I pulled out my checkbook. I wrote a check. I didn't fill in the amount. I signed it and slid it across the desk. Fill in whatever number makes you work 24 hours a day, I said. Miller looked at the check. He looked at me. They messed with the wrong engineer, didn't they? Miller said. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. They think I am just an old man, I said. They think I am a foundation that is crumbling. They are about to find out that I am the wrecking ball. I walked out of the office. The sun had set. The street lights were flickering on. I wasn't going home to sleep. I was going to my basement. I had blueprints to draw, not for a building, but for a trap. A trap so perfect, so inescapable, that when the Harringtons stepped into it, they wouldn't just fall. They would be crushed. Maya had a bruise on her arm. For that, I would burn their world to the ground. Miller was expensive, but he was worth every penny. He did not just find dirt, he excavated it. He brought up the soil samples and tested them for toxicity. 2 days after I hired him, a courier arrived at my door with a thick manila envelope. The return address just said Miller Consulting. I took the package into my study and locked the door. I poured myself a black coffee and sat down at my desk. I used my letter opener to slit the envelope. Inside was a stack of papers that told a story. It was not a story of success and old money as the Harringtons like to pretend. It was a story of a slow, catastrophic structural failure. I put on my reading glasses and began to read. The first page was a credit report for Richard Harrington. I expected to see high limits and platinum status. What I saw was a disaster zone. His credit score was in the low 400s. That is not just bad, that is radioactive. There were liens on their mansion. There were 3 maxed-out credit cards with interest rates that should be illegal. I turned the page, the foreclosure notice. Their sprawling estate in the suburbs, the one with the heated pool and the tennis court, had been in pre-foreclosure for 6 months. They hadn't paid the mortgage in nearly a year. They were squatting in their own house waiting for the bank to come with the eviction squad. But the real horror was on page 3. It was a list of private loans. These were not loans from Chase or Bank of America. These were loans from shell companies with names like Vulture Capital and grim-sounding LLCs based in New Jersey. Miller had added a note in red ink in the margin. These are sharks, Otis. Organized crime. Richard owes $300,000 to people who break kneecaps for a living. I leaned back in my chair. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together with a terrifying snap. The urgency, the desperation, the fake doctor, the abuse of Maya. It wasn't just greed, it was fear. Richard and Sylvia were drowning. They were standing on the trapdoor with a noose around their necks, and the debt collectors were about to pull the lever. They needed a lifeline. And I was the lifeline. My brownstone. My $4 million asset was the only thing that could pay off the sharks and keep their house of cards standing for another year. They didn't want to put me in a home because I was sick. They wanted to liquidate me because I was solvent. I was not a person to them. I was a piggy bank they needed to smash open to save their own skins. Just as I was digesting this bile, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera on my phone. It was Marcus. My son looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His shirt was wrinkled. His tie was loose. He was pacing on my porch, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked at the door with a mixture of hope and terror. I went downstairs. I didn't hide the report. I left it right there on my desk, open to the page about the loan sharks. I opened the front door. "Dad," Marcus said. He sounded breathless. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. "Come in, son." He walked past me into the hallway. He didn't take off his shoes. He walked straight to the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. He put his head in his hands. I stood in the doorway watching him. I felt a pang of pity, but I shoved it down. Pity is rust. It weakens the steel. I needed to be strong for him because he was too weak to be strong for himself. "Do you want water?" I asked. "No," Marcus said. He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "Dad, we need to talk business." "Business," I repeated. I sat in my armchair opposite him. "Yes," Marcus said. He pulled a folder out of his briefcase. His hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped it. "Richard has an opportunity. A huge opportunity. It is a commercial development in the city center. A high rise." I listened. I knew Richard hadn't built anything in 5 years. "He needs investors." Marcus continued, his voice speeding up like a salesman running out of time. "Serious investors. He wants to bring you in, Dad. He knows you have the equity in this house. He says if we leverage the brownstone, we can buy in at the ground floor. The returns would be massive. We could triple your money in 2 years. I looked at my son. He was reciting a script, a bad script. "Triple my money," I said flatly. "Yes," Marcus said. "It is a sure thing. But we have to move fast. The window is closing today. Richard said if we don't sign the papers by 5 p.m., we lose the spot." I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. "So that is why you are here," I said, "to get me to sign the house over for an investment." Marcus nodded vigorously. "Exactly. It is not about selling the house, Dad. It is about using it as collateral. Just for a bridge loan. Richard will pay it back in 6 months. You won't even notice." I crossed my legs. I looked at him with the cold, analytical eyes of an engineer inspecting a faulty beam. "Marcus," I said, "do you know what a Ponzi scheme is?" Marcus flinched. "What?" "No, Dad. This is legitimate. Richard is a titan of industry. Richard is broke," I said. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. Marcus froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "What did you say?" Marcus whispered. I stood up. I walked over to the mantelpiece where I kept my pipe collection. I didn't smoke anymore, but I liked the feel of the wood. I said, "Richard is broke," I repeated. "He hasn't paid his mortgage in 11 months. His credit cards are maxed out. And he owes 300 grand to a loan shark named Vinny, who operates out of a warehouse in Jersey." Marcus stood up. He looked pale. "That is a lie. That is a lie, Dad. You are making things up. Richard drives a Mercedes. They have a butler. They lease the Mercedes," I said, turning to face him. "And the butler hasn't been paid in 3 weeks. I have the report, Marcus. I have the bank statements." I pointed to the ceiling toward my study. "He is not building a high-rise," I said. "He is trying to plug a hole in his sinking ship with the timber from my house. If I sign those papers, Marcus, the money won't go into an investment. It will go to pay off his gambling debts and his bad loans. And in 6 months, when the bank calls the note on this house, Richard won't have a dime to pay it back. We will lose everything. The brownstone, your inheritance, Maya's future, everything." Marcus was shaking his head violently. "No, no, you are wrong. You are paranoid. Tiffany told me. Tiffany is in on it." I cut him off. Or maybe she is just as desperate as he is. Marcus looked at me with wild eyes. He looked like a cornered animal. "You just hate them," Marcus shouted. "You have always hated them because they are white and they are rich and they have class. You are jealous, Dad. You are a bitter old man who wants to ruin my chance at success." I looked at him. "Class. He thought borrowing money to buy expensive suits was class. I am not jealous, son, I said calmly. I am solvent. There is a difference. Marcus grabbed the folder from the table. He waved the papers at me. Just sign the power of attorney, he screamed. Stop being so selfish. Do it for me. Do it for Maya. If this deal goes through, we will be set for life. If we miss it, if you miss it what I asked. Marcus stopped. He was breathing hard. He looked terrified. If we miss it, he stammered. Richard says he can't help us anymore. He says he will cut us off. I laughed. It was a harsh bark of a laugh. Cut you off from what, Marcus, I asked. From his debt. From his lies. He has nothing to give you, son. He is feeding off you. Marcus threw the papers on the floor. You are lying, he screamed. He stepped close to me. He was taller than me now, but he had no foundation. He poked me in the chest. You are going to sign this, Marcus snarled. One way or another, Dr. Eris is ready to testify. We will have you declared incompetent by Monday. You can sign it now as a partner, or you can sign it later as a patient in a locked ward, but you are giving us this house. I looked at his finger on my chest. I looked at his face twisted with greed and fear. I looked for my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I put through college. I didn't see him. I saw a stranger. I saw a hollow shell filled with Richard Harrington's poison. He poked me again. Harder. Sign it, old man, Marcus hissed. I didn't think. I reacted. It was pure instinct. The instinct of a father who sees his child reaching for a live wire and knows the only way to save him is to knock him back. My hand moved in a blur. Smack. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot in the quiet room. It wasn't a punch. I didn't use a closed fist. It was an open palm slap across his cheek. It was the kind of slap you give a hysterical person to snap them back to reality. Marcus stumbled back. He held his cheek. He looked at me with shock. I had never hit him in his life. Not once. I didn't believe in corporal punishment. I believed in logic. But logic had failed. He stared at me, his eyes wide, his mouth open. The red imprint of my hand was blooming on his skin. Dad, he whispered. I stood tall. I felt vibrating with energy. I lowered my hand. You are not my son, I said. My voice was low and dangerous. Marcus stepped back. What? My son is a man, I said. My son has a spine. My son protects his daughter. You are a puppet. You are a string puppet dancing for a bankrupt clown. I pointed at the door. Get out of my house, I said. Dad, wait. Marcus started to whimper. The anger was gone, replaced by the shock of the physical contact. I took a step toward him. I said, Get out! I roared. My voice shook the windows. I don't want to see you until you cut those strings, I said. Take your papers. Take your lies. And tell Richard Harrington that if he sends you here again, I won't just slap you. I will dismantle him. I will send that credit report to every bank in the city. I will make sure he can't even open a checking account at a grocery store. Marcus scrambled to pick up the papers. He was crying now, tears of humiliation. You can't do this, Marcus sobbed. We are family. I walked to the door and threw it open. Family doesn't steal, I said. Family doesn't drug cats, and family doesn't pinch little girls. Marcus stopped in the doorway. He looked at me one last time. He looked like he wanted to say something, to apologize, to beg. But the fear of Tiffany and Richard was still too strong. He turned and ran down the steps. He got into his car and sped away. I stood in the doorway watching him go. My hand was stinging from the slap. My heart was breaking. But my resolve was harder than concrete. I closed the door. I locked it. I went back to my desk. I picked up the phone. I called Miller. It is time for the next phase, I said. What is the play? Otis Miller asked. They are desperate, I said. Marcus just confirmed it. They are on a deadline. That means they are going to make a mistake. I looked at the credit report again. Tonight, I said, I want you to watch my house. Richard isn't going to wait for the courts. He is running out of time. He is going to come for the deed himself. You think he will break in? Miller asked. I know he will, I said. He thinks I am an old man living alone. He thinks I am vulnerable. I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out a spool of high-tension fishing wire and a bag of industrial-grade chili powder. Let him come, I said. I am not going to call the cops, Miller. Not yet. Why not? Miller asked. Because I said testing the strength of the wire. I want to catch a rat. And to catch a rat, you have to let him think he found the cheese. I hung up. The sun was going down. The shadows were getting long. I had work to do. My house was about to become a fortress, and Richard Harrington was about to walk into a nightmare. I sat in the winged back chair in the corner of my living room. The lights were off. The curtains were drawn. The only illumination came from the street lamp outside, filtering through the cracks in the blinds, casting long skeletal shadows across the floor. It was 2 a.m. To most men of my age, this is the hour of deep sleep or maybe a bathroom break. But tonight, it was the hour of the hunter. My house was silent, but it was not asleep. It was armed. I had spent the last 6 hours turning my beloved brownstone into a machine. I did not believe in guns. Guns are messy and they are final. I believe in consequences. I believe in cause and effect. If you apply force to a structure that is not designed to take it, the structure should push back. I had placed a baby monitor on the floor next to my chair. It was tuned to the frequency of the sensor I had rigged on the back door. The back door was the weak point. It was the only entry point that was not visible from the street. If Richard was coming, he would come through the garden. He was a coward, and cowards always look for the back way in. I checked the tension of the fishing line one last time in my mind. It was strung across the hallway at ankle height. Tripwires are ancient technology, but they work because human beings are arrogant. When a man breaks into a house, he looks left and right. He looks for cameras. He looks for dogs. He never looks down. Above the tripwire, taped securely to the crown molding, I had rigged a dispersal unit. It was simple engineering. A spring-loaded canister filled with 2 pounds of industrial-grade chili powder. This was not the stuff you sprinkle on tacos. This was the powder used in bear mace. It was pure capsaicin. When released, it would create a cloud of red dust that would instantly seek out moisture. Eyes, nose, throat, lungs. I took a sip of water. My hand was steady. I was not afraid. I was angry. But it was a cold anger, the kind of anger that sharpens your senses rather than dulling them. Then the baby monitor crackled. It was a soft sound. Metal on metal. The sound of a pry bar being wedged into a door frame. I set my glass down. I did not move. I waited. There was a grunt of exertion. Then a loud pop as the deadbolt gave way. The wood of the door frame had splintered. I winced. That was original mahogany. I would have to repair that later. Footsteps. They were heavy but trying to be light. The floorboards in the kitchen groaned. I knew every squeak in this house. I knew exactly where he was. He was moving past the refrigerator. Now he was at the island. Now he was heading for the hallway that led to the basement stairs. He was coming for the safe. I listened to his breathing. It was ragged. He was nervous. Good. Nervous men make mistakes. He stepped into the hallway. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3, twang. The sound of the fishing line snapping was sharp and distinct. Whoosh! The canister above triggered perfectly. I heard the hiss of compressed air releasing the powder. It sounded like an angry snake. Then there was silence for exactly 1 second. That is the time it takes for the particulates to hang in the air and be inhaled. Then the screaming started. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure biological panic. It was the sound of a man who suddenly feels like his lungs are on fire. Ack! Gah! Help! Richard Harrington was coughing so hard it sounded like his ribs were going to snap. I heard him stumble. He crashed into the wall. He knocked over a vase. He fell to his knees, retching and gasping for air. I stood up. I picked up my heavy flashlight. I did not turn it on yet. I walked slowly out of the living room and into the hallway. The air was thick with the spicy metallic scent of the pepper. I pulled my shirt up over my nose. I was used to hazardous environments. I saw a dark shape writhing on the floor. He was clawing at his eyes. He was rolling back and forth trying to escape the burning cloud, but he was just kicking up more dust. I clicked the flashlight on. The beam cut through the red haze and pinned him to the floor. Richard Harrington looked pathetic. He was wearing a black turtleneck and black pants like a cat burglar from a bad movie. His face was a mask of snot and tears. His eyes were swollen shut. His skin was turning a bright, angry red. "Water," he gasped. "Please, water." I stood over him. I did not offer him water. Water just spreads the oil. He should have known that. "You are trespassing, Richard," I said. My voice was calm, booming in the narrow hallway. Richard froze. He recognized my voice. He tried to scramble backward, crab walking away from the light, but he hit the stairs. "Otis," he choked out. "My eyes! You blinded me." I shined the light directly into his face. "You blinded yourself," I said. "You have been blind for years. You didn't see the cliff you were driving your family off of. And you didn't see the wire." I stepped closer. I loomed over him. "Why are you here, Richard?" I asked. He coughed violently, spitting phlegm onto my hardwood floor. "The deed," he wheezed. "Give me the deed. I know it is in the safe." I reached into the inside pocket of my robe. I pulled out a folded document. It was the original deed to the brownstone. The paper was yellowed with age. "Is this what you want?" I asked, holding it under the light. Richard squinted, trying to force his swollen eyes open. He saw the paper. He reached for it, his hand trembling. "Give it to me," he rasped. "You don't understand. They will kill me. Vinny." He gave me until tomorrow. "I need the collateral." I pulled the paper back. "You broke into my house to steal my home," I said. "You threatened my son. You tortured my granddaughter. All for this piece of paper." "I need it!" Richard screamed, his voice cracking. "Just sign it over. You are old. You are going to die anyway. Let me save my family." "Save your family," I repeated. "You are the danger to your family, Richard." I crouched down so I was eye level with him. "You want the deed," I said. "Here. Look at it. Look closely." I held the paper inches from his face. "Read the transfer date," I said. Richard blinked, tears streaming down his face. He focused on the bottom of the page. 1999, he read. "No," I said. "Look at the amendment. The trust transfer. 5 years ago." Richard squinted. He read the line. "Property of the Maya King Revocable Trust." He stopped breathing for a moment. He looked up at me. "What is this?" he whispered. I stood up. I folded the paper and put it back in my pocket. "I transferred the house to a trust on Maya's 2nd birthday," I said. "I am the trustee. But the beneficiary is Maya. I can't sell it. I can't leverage it. And I certainly can't give it to a bankrupt gambling addict to pay off a loan shark." Richard stared at me. The realization washed over him. The heist was for nothing. Even if he killed me, even if he stole the paper, it was worthless to him. The house belonged to a 7-year-old girl. You old bastard," he hissed. "You planned this." "I am a structural engineer," I said. "I planned for earthquakes, I planned for floods, and I planned for you. I knew my son was weak. I knew he would marry someone like Tiffany, so I built a firewall around this asset before she could even get her claws into it." Richard slumped against the wall. He looked defeated. For a moment, I thought I had won. I thought I had broken him. But then a strange look crossed his face. He started to laugh. It was a wet, gurgling laugh. It sounded psychotic in the dark hallway. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. He looked up at me, and his red, swollen eyes were full of malice. "A trust," he said. "A trust for Maya." "Yes," I said. "And since she is a minor, nobody can touch it until she is 25. Richard pulled himself up. He used the banister to stand. He was swaying, but he was smiling. A cruel, twisted smile. "You forgot one thing, Otis," he said. His voice was getting stronger, fueled by a new evil idea. "What is that?" I asked, gripping my flashlight. "If the property belongs to Maya," Richard said, wiping the chili powder from his lips, "then the legal guardian of the minor has control over the asset management." I felt a cold stone drop in my stomach. "I am the trustee," I said. "For now," Richard said. He took a step toward the broken door. "But you are incompetent, remember. Dr. Aris has the file. We are going to prove you are unfit. We are going to prove you are dangerous. Look at you. You just gassed a man in your own hallway. You are unstable." He laughed again. "When the court removes you as trustee," Richard said, "who becomes the guardian of the property? The parents, Marcus, and Tiffany." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Tiffany will control the trust, Otis. She will control Maya, and she will make that little girl sign whatever piece of paper we put in front of her. If we have to pinch her until she is black and blue, she will sign." My hand tightened on the flashlight. I wanted to swing it. I wanted to crack his skull. "Get out," I growled. Richard stumbled toward the back door. He kicked the broken wood aside. "I am going, Otis," he said, "and I am taking your granddaughter. She is our ticket now. You just made her the most valuable asset in the city. Thank you." He stepped out into the night. "Run, old man," Richard yelled from the darkness. "Run and hide, because we are coming for her, and there is nothing you can do to stop us." I heard him running through the garden, crashing through the bushes. I stood in the hallway. The pepper dust was settling on the floor like red snow. My eyes were burning, but I didn't blink. I had made a mistake, a calculation error. I thought the trust would protect the house. I didn't realize that by putting the house in Maya's name, I had painted a target on her back. I hadn't saved her. I had turned her into a walking vault that Richard and Tiffany needed to crack open. I walked to the kitchen sink and splashed cold water on my face. Richard was right about one thing. They were going to come for her. They were going to try to break me legally and break her physically. I looked at the clock. It was 2:30 in the morning. I went to the basement. I opened the safe again. I took out the deed. I put it in a metal box. Then I took out something else. A set of keys, not car keys. Keys to a construction site. Keys to a place where the laws of the city didn't apply. A place of steel and concrete and deep holes. I picked up my phone. I dialed Miller. He answered on the first ring. "Did he show up?" Miller asked. "Yes," I said. "Did you get him?" "I let him go," I said. Miller was silent. "Why?" "Because the game has changed," I said. "They are going to take Maya. They are going to take her out of state to bypass the trust laws." "How do you know?" Miller asked. "Because Richard just told me," I said. "He thinks he won. He thinks he found the loophole." "So what do we do, Otis?" I looked at the keys in my hand. "We go on the offensive," I said. "Find out where Tiffany is right now. Find out where Maya is. I am going to get my granddaughter back, Miller. And I am not going to wait for a judge." "Tonight, the engineer dies," I whispered to the empty room, "and the soldier wakes up." The morning sun did not bring warmth. It brought a cold gray light that revealed the splinters in my back door frame where Richard had forced his way in. I was on my knees with a bucket of wood filler and a sanding block, repairing the damage. That is what I have done my whole life. I fix things that other people break. But as I smoothed the paste over the jagged mahogany, I knew that some things cannot be fixed with glue. Some things have to be torn down completely before you can build again. My phone rang at 9 a.m. sharp. It was Marcus. I did not want to answer. Listening to my son's voice these days was like listening to a recording of a hostage reading a ransom note, but I wiped the dust from my hands and swiped the green button. "Hello, Marcus," I said. "Dad." His voice was breathless. "Fast. Too fast. We are leaving." "Leaving," I repeated. "Leaving the house." "No, Dad. Leaving the country. Tiffany has organized a trip, a wellness retreat. For Maya. We are going to Switzerland." I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. "Switzerland. That is sudden," I said. "It is necessary," Marcus said. His voice pitched up a little. "The doctor said Maya needs a change of environment. The stress of the last few weeks has been too much for her. We need to get her away from the toxicity here." Toxicity, I thought. He meant me. "When are you leaving?" I asked. "Right now," Marcus said. "The car is already here. We are heading to the airport. I just wanted to call and say goodbye. We might be gone for a while, maybe a few months, until things settle down. A few months. In a country with strict banking secrecy laws and very expensive private boarding schools. A country where a grandfather with a restraining order would never be able to find his granddaughter." "Let me talk to her, Marcus," I said. "Put Maya on the phone." "I can't," he said. "She is already in the car with Tiffany. We have to go, Dad. We are late." "Marcus," I said, my voice hardening, "do not get on that plane. You are running away from a crime scene." "Richard broke into my house last night." Marcus went silent. For a second I thought he hung up. "I know," he whispered. "He told us. He said you attacked him. He said you are dangerous. That is why we have to go, Dad. We can't let Maya be around you." He hung up. The line went dead. I stood in my hallway holding the phone. My hand was shaking, not from age, from the realization of what was happening. This was not a vacation. This was an abduction. They were taking the asset, my granddaughter, to a jurisdiction where they could manipulate the trust without my interference. Once they were in international airspace, I would be powerless. But they made one mistake. They thought I was just an old man who gave his granddaughter dolls and candy. They forgot about the unicorn. 3 months ago, for Maya's 7th birthday, I gave her a smartwatch. It was bright pink with a unicorn on the face. It looked like a cheap toy you buy in a vending machine. Tiffany had laughed when she saw it. She called it tacky. She let Maya wear it because she thought it was garbage. But inside that pink plastic case was a GPS tracker with a battery life of 10 days. And I had programmed a panic button. One long press on the unicorn's nose and it would send a distress signal to my phone with a 10-second audio clip. I told Maya it was our secret spy watch. I told her, if you are ever in trouble and you can't talk, just press the nose. I stared at my phone. I willed it to ring. I prayed that my granddaughter was smart enough and brave enough to remember the game. And then it happened. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A red notification flashed on my screen. SOS alert, Agent Maya. My heart stopped. I opened the app. A map appeared. A blue dot was moving fast along the highway, but I didn't look at the map first. I pressed play on the audio clip. The sound was muffled at first. Then I heard the rustle of fabric. Then a small, terrified voice. "Ow, Mommy, stop hurting me." Then Tiffany's voice. Sharp, hateful. "Shut up and sign the paper, Maya. Just trace your name like we practiced. Do it, or I will pinch you again." "I don't want to," Maya sobbed. "I want Grandpa." "Grandpa is dead to us," Tiffany hissed. "Sign the damn paper. If you sign it, we can go on the airplane." The audio cut off. I dropped the sanding block. It hit the floor with a loud clatter. Grandpa is dead to us. Rage is a funny thing. When it gets hot enough, it turns cold. It turns into liquid nitrogen. It clarifies everything. I looked at the map. I zoomed in on the blue dot. They were on the interstate heading west. I frowned. O'Hare International Airport was north. Why were they going west? I watched the dot moving. It exited the highway. It turned onto a smaller road, a road I knew. I had paved that road in 1985. They were not going to O'Hare. They were not flying commercial. Of course not. You cannot drag a crying, bruised child through a TSA security checkpoint without raising questions. You cannot force a 7-year-old to sign legal documents in a crowded terminal. They were going to the executive airfield, private jets, no security, no questions asked if you have enough money. And if they were flying private, they weren't going to Switzerland. Richard was broke. A charter to Europe costs $50,000. He didn't have that. I zoomed out on the map. I looked at the trajectory. They were going to a non-extradition state, or a state with loose guardianship laws. Nevada, or maybe a non-extradition country in the Caribbean where Richard probably had a shell company. It didn't matter where they were going. What mattered was that if those wheels left the ground, I might never see Maya again. I checked the time. They were 10 minutes from the airfield. I was 20 minutes away. I could not catch them. Physics was against me. But I am an engineer. When you cannot stop a force, you divert it. And when you cannot divert it, you call in a bigger force. I opened my contact list. I scrolled past the family members, past the doctors. I went to a folder labeled Deep Foundation. These were not the people you called for a dinner party. These were the people you called when a tunnel collapsed. These were the people who knew where the bodies were buried because they poured the concrete over them. I pressed the first name, Silverman. He answered on the first ring. Silverman was a lawyer, but he didn't have an office. He worked out of a back room in a cigar bar. He was disbarred in New York for aggressive litigation and reinstated in Illinois because he was the only one who could win impossible cases. "Otis," he rasped. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "Code Red Silverman," I said. "Talk to me. They are taking the girl," I said. "They are at the executive airfield right now. Kidnapping disguised as a vacation. I have audio of abuse. Coerced signature on legal documents," Police Silverman asked. "Too slow," I said. "They will be in the air before the cops even finish taking my statement. I need an injunction, and I need it now." Silverman didn't hesitate. "Which judge is on rotation?" "Judge Miller," I said. "I played golf with him yesterday," Silverman said. "I can get a signature in 5 minutes. But serving it is the problem. If they are on private land, I will handle the service," I said. "You get the paper. Send a digital copy to my phone, and alert the FAA. Tell them there is a minor being trafficked on that flight plan. Ground the plane, Silverman. Consider it done. Don't do anything stupid, Otis." I hung up. I didn't promise not to do anything stupid. Stupid is relative. I dialed the second number. Big Mike. Mike was the foreman of the runway repaving project at the executive airfield. I had hired him 30 years ago as an apprentice. I taught him how to read a grade stake. I saved his job when he showed up drunk after his divorce. He owed me. Otis Mike boomed. Long time boss. I need a favor, Mike, and it is a big one. Name it. Are you working the strip today? Yeah, we are patching the north taxiway. Why? I need you to close the runway, Mike. Silence. Boss, that is federal aviation property. If I park a truck on the runway without authorization, Mike, I said, cutting him off. My granddaughter is on a plane that is about to take off. Her mother is beating her. They are stealing her, Mike. I heard Mike take a deep breath. I heard the sound of heavy machinery in the background. What is the tail number? I don't know, I said, but it is leaving in 10 minutes. It is the only flight heading out right now. I heard the sound of a truck door slamming. I got you, boss, Mike said. I think my steamroller just broke down, right in the middle of the taxiway. Ain't nothing getting past me. I love you, Mike. Go get her, boss. I hung up. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed the metal box from the safe, the one with the trust documents, and I grabbed my hard hat. I walked out to my car. I moved with a speed I didn't know I still possessed. My arthritis was gone. My fatigue was gone. I was running on pure adrenaline and cold fury. I drove. I didn't look at the speedometer. I ran 2 red lights. I didn't care. Let the police chase me. It would only add to the cavalry. As I drove, I played the audio clip again. Ow, Mommy, stop hurting me. I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. Tiffany Harrington thought she was playing a game of chess. She thought she could take my queen and checkmate me. She thought money and a private jet made her untouchable. But she forgot that I built the board she was playing on. I pulled up to the security gate of the airfield. The guard stepped out. He looked bored. Private property, sir, he said, raising his hand. I didn't stop. I rolled down my window. I held up my phone. On the screen was the digital injunction Silverman had just texted me. It had the seal of the court and the signature of a judge. Court order, I shouted. Open the gate or you are obstructing justice. The guard hesitated. He looked at the seal. He looked at my face. He saw a 74-year-old man with eyes like burning coal. He opened the gate. I floored it. The Buick roared onto the tarmac. I saw them. A sleek white Learjet was sitting at the end of the runway. Its engines were whining. The stairs were still down. A black SUV was parked next to it. And there, standing at the bottom of the stairs, was a small figure in a pink coat. Maya. Tiffany was behind her, shoving her forward. Richard was standing by the pilot, waving his arms, screaming at someone. I looked down the runway. A massive yellow steamroller was parked sideways across the tarmac. Big Mike was standing on top of it looking at his watch. The plane was trapped. I slammed on the brakes. My car screeched to a halt 10 yards from the plane. I kicked the door open. I stepped out. The wind whipped my coat around my legs. The noise of the jet engines was deafening, but I didn't flinch. I walked toward them. Richard saw me first. His face went from anger to shock. He looked at the steamroller, then he looked at me. Tiffany turned around. She still had her hand on Maya's shoulder. Otis, she screamed over the roar of the engines. Get away! You are violating the restraining order. I didn't stop walking. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the phone with the audio recording queued up. I pulled out the court order. I am not here to visit. I yelled, my voice cutting through the noise. I pointed at the steamroller. I am here to foreclose. Maya saw me. She wrenched herself free from Tiffany's grip. Grandpa! She started to run. Tiffany grabbed her hood. Maya slipped out of the coat and kept running. Tiffany lunged for her, but Richard grabbed Tiffany's arm. Let her go! He yelled, pointing at the perimeter fence. Police cars were streaming onto the tarmac, lights flashing, sirens wailing. Silverman had done his job. Maya ran into my arms. She hit me with the force of a cannonball. She was shaking. She was crying. I lifted her up. I held her tight against my chest. I felt her small heart beating against mine. I got you, baby, I whispered into her hair. I got you. I looked at Tiffany and Richard. They were standing by the plane, surrounded. The pilot had cut the engines. The silence that followed was heavy and sweet. Tiffany looked at me with pure venom. This isn't over. Otis, she screamed, you can't keep her. I am her mother. I looked at the bruise on Maya's arm. I looked at the fear in her eyes. You were her mother, I said. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the police cars holding my granddaughter. Now I said softly to Maya, "You are safe." But I knew the war wasn't over. This was just the end of the first battle. They would come back. They always come back. But next time I wouldn't just block the runway. Next time I would take away their wings. The tarmac of the airfield was chaos. Blue lights flashed in a strobe effect that made everyone move like disjointed puppets. I was holding Maya tight against my chest, but I knew I could not hold off an entire police precinct. 2 officers approached me with their hands on their holsters. They were young. They looked nervous. And they looked at me, a large black man holding a white child with a suspicion that was older than the concrete beneath our feet. "Put the child down, sir," the first officer shouted. "Put her down and step away from the vehicle. I am her grandfather." I said, my voice calm but loud enough to be heard over the wind. "I am her legal trustee. These people are kidnapping her." "That is a lie," Tiffany shrieked. She was putting on the performance of a lifetime. She collapsed against the side of the police cruiser, sobbing hysterically. "He is crazy. He has dementia. He has a restraining order against him. Please save my daughter." The officer looked at Tiffany. He saw a well-dressed woman in distress. Then he looked at me. He saw an old man in the work coat with dust on his hands and a look of fury in his eyes. The calculation in his head took less than a second. "Sir, I am not going to ask you again," the officer said, unholstering his taser. "Step away from the girl." I looked at Maya. She was trembling. I could feel her small fingers digging into my jacket. "It is okay, baby," I whispered. "Grandpa has to talk to the policeman. You be brave." I set her down. The moment her feet touched the ground, Tiffany lunged forward, not to hug her, but to pull her away. She yanked Maya so hard the poor girl stumbled. "You monster," Tiffany yelled at me. "You traumatized her." I raised my hands slowly. "I have a court order," I said. "I have an injunction signed by Judge Miller stopping this flight." I reached for my pocket to show them the phone. "He has a gun," one of the officers screamed. I froze. I didn't have a gun. I had a phone. But in America, that difference often doesn't matter until after the bullets fly. "Don't shoot," I said. "It is a phone." They rushed me. 2 of them. They grabbed my arms and slammed me against the side of the police car. The metal was cold against my cheek. I heard the click of handcuffs. My shoulders screamed in protest, but I didn't fight back. Resistance now would just give them an excuse. "You are making a mistake," I gritted out as they tightened the cuffs. "Check the flight manifest. Check the injunction." "Shut up," the officer said, pushing my head down as he shoved me into the back of the cruiser. "You can tell it to the judge." I sat in the back of the car. The cage wire separated me from the front. I watched through the window as they put Maya into an ambulance. Tiffany got in with her still playing the role of the terrified mother. Richard Harrington was talking to the police sergeant, pointing at me and shaking his head. He looked like a concerned citizen. He looked respectable. I felt a bile rise in my throat. This was how they won. They used the system. They used the optics. They knew that a rich white family looks innocent and an angry black grandfather looks guilty. They drove me to the station. It wasn't the main precinct. It was the airport holding facility. A windowless box of concrete and fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped flies. They took my belt. They took my shoelaces. They took my phone, my only link to the evidence. I sat on a metal bench bolted to the floor. Hours passed. I counted the cracks in the cinder block wall. I calculated the stress load of the ceiling. I did anything to keep my mind from snapping. Finally, the door opened. A detective walked in. He looked tired. He carried a clipboard. "Mr. King," he said, sitting down across from me. "You have had a busy morning. Trespassing on federal property, violation of a restraining order, resisting arrest." "I didn't do any of that," I said. "I stopped a kidnapping." The detective sighed. He tossed a file onto the table. It was the fake medical file Dr. Eris had created. "Your daughter-in-law provided this," he said. "It says here you are suffering from advanced Alzheimer's with episodes of violent paranoia. It says you attacked a family friend last night with chemical spray." "Self-defense," I said. "Richard Harrington broke into my home." The detective looked skeptical. "He broke into your home, or he came to check on you and you gassed him." I leaned forward. The handcuffs clinked against the table. "Listen to me, detective. There is a recording. On my phone. Or the cloud. Tiffany was abusing the girl. She was forcing her to sign documents. We checked your phone, the detective said. It is locked. And frankly, Mr. King, we have a statement from the girl's father. My heart sank. Marcus. He is here, I asked. He just arrived, the detective said. And he tells a very different story. Let me see him, I said. Let me talk to my son. The detective hesitated. Then he stood up and walked to the door. He opened it. Marcus, come in. My son walked into the interrogation room. He didn't look at me. He looked at the wall. He looked at his shoes. He looked everywhere except at his father's eyes. He was wearing a suit, but he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He looked like a child wearing his father's clothes. Marcus, I said. My voice was gentle. Tell them. Tell them about the bear. Tell them about the loan sharks. Tell them why you were really on that plane. Marcus stood by the door. He was wringing his hands. I saw sweat on his forehead. Dad, please, Marcus whispered. Stop this. Stop what, Marcus, I asked. Stop telling the truth. He looked up then, and what I saw in his eyes broke the last structural beam of my heart. It wasn't fear. It was resignation. He had made his choice. He had chosen the path of least resistance. He had chosen the lie because the truth was too hard to carry. He is sick, Detective Marcus said. His voice was steady now, rehearsed. My father. He has been deteriorating for months. He imagines conspiracies. He thinks everyone is out to get his money. Marcus, I warned. Think about what you are doing. He attacked my wife. Marcus continued talking over me. He attacked my father-in-law, and today he chased our plane down the runway like a maniac. We were just trying to take Maya on a vacation, to get her away from him. I stared at him. This was the boy I had carried on my shoulders. This was the boy I had taught to be a man, and now he was standing there burying me alive. He is not competent, Marcus said to the detective. He needs to be in a facility. Please don't charge him. Just let us get him the help he needs. The detective nodded sympathetically. He looked at me with pity. You see, Mr. King, the detective said, your family loves you. They are trying to protect you from yourself. I looked at Marcus. I didn't see my son anymore. I saw a stranger. I saw a casualty of war. You are going to let them take her, I asked Marcus. You saw the bruises on her arm. You know what Tiffany does to her, and you are going to let them take her to a place where I can't reach her. Marcus flinched. He closed his eyes. She fell, Marcus said. Maya fell. Nobody hurt her. You are imagining things, Dad. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bridge collapsing. The moment when the steel gives way and there is nothing left to hold up the weight. I sat back. I let my shoulders drop. There was no point in shouting. There was no point in fighting. They had built a perfect cage of lies, and Marcus had just locked the door. Okay, I said softly. Okay, the detective asked, surprised. I am tired, I said. Maybe you are right. Maybe I am confused. Marcus opened his eyes. He looked relieved. A sick, twisted relief. Thank you, Dad, he said. It is for the best. The detective stood up. Well, since the family is declining to press charges for the assault and considering your condition, we will process you for the disorderly conduct and transfer you to the psych ward for evaluation. Handcuff him. The detective ordered the guard. The guard pulled me up. He wrenched my arms behind my back. He ratcheted the cuffs tight, metal biting into bone. I stood there, a prisoner, an old man written off by the world. Marcus turned to leave. He couldn't wait to get out of that room. He couldn't wait to wash his hands of me. Marcus, I said. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. You won the battle, I said. My voice was low. It didn't sound like a senile man. It sounded like grinding stone. You got the plane. You got the girl. You got the police. I paused. I let the silence stretch until Marcus had to look at me. But you forgot one thing, son. What Marcus whispered. I didn't call the police, I said. I called the federal government. Marcus frowned. What are you talking about? The bear, I said. The camera. It wasn't just recording video, Marcus. It was a credit card skimmer. Richard was using it to launder money. And do you know who investigates interstate wire fraud and money laundering? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who knows the trap has already been sprung. The FBI doesn't care about restraining orders, Marcus. And they don't care about medical records. They care about numbers. And I gave them all the numbers. Marcus went pale. He looked at the detective. What is he talking about? Marcus asked. The detective looked confused. I don't know. Just ramblings. Take him away. The guard shoved me toward the holding cell. I walked past Marcus. I leaned in close to his ear. You should have checked the flight plan, I whispered. The FBI grounded that plane 10 minutes ago. They are not waiting in Switzerland, Marcus. They are waiting in the interrogation room next door. I laughed. I laughed loud and hard as they dragged me down the hallway. I saw Marcus standing there frozen, the color draining from his face, the realization hitting him like a sledgehammer. He wasn't free. He wasn't safe. He was just the next domino to fall. I sat in the cell. The bench was cold. The air smelled of urine and bleach. But I felt good. I felt strong. Because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't the prisoner here. I was the bait, and the sharks had just taken a bite. Just you wait, I whispered to the empty cell. Just you wait. The holding cell at the airport precinct was designed to break you. It was a 10 by 10 box of cinder blocks painted a color that was somewhere between vomit and hopelessness. There was no window. The only light came from a fluorescent tube behind a wire cage that buzzed like an angry hornet. The air smelled of stale sweat, industrial disinfectant, and the metallic tang of fear. I sat on the steel bench bolted to the wall. My back was straight. My hands were folded in my lap. I closed my eyes and slowed my breathing. I am a structural engineer. I know about stress tests. I know that concrete actually gets stronger over time if the mixture is right. And right now, my mixture was perfect. It was 1 part patience and 3 parts pure, unadulterated rage. The guard walked by every hour. He was a young kid, probably 22. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. To him, I was just another senile old man who had caused a scene. A family dispute gone wrong. He didn't know he was looking at a man who was holding the detonator to a bomb that was about to level a financial empire. Hey, Pops, the guard said, tapping his baton on the bars. You want your phone call? You got one. Make it count. Call a lawyer. I stood up. My knees popped, but I didn't wince. I walked to the bars. I don't need a lawyer, son, I said. The guard rolled his eyes. Suit yourself. You want to call your son then? Maybe he will bail you out. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. My son was currently busy selling his soul. No, I said. I want to call a number in Washington, D.C. The guard frowned. D.C. Who do you know in D.C.? I know a man named Special Agent Miller, I said. He works in the cyber crimes division of the FBI. And if you want to keep your job when the feds swarm this building in about 3 hours, I suggest you let me make that call. The guard hesitated. He looked at my face. He didn't see dementia. He saw authority. He unlocked the cell door and led me to the phone on the wall. I dialed the number from memory. I didn't need a phone book. I had memorized this number 5 years ago when I first suspected Richard Harrington was dirty. The line rang twice. Miller here. Agent Miller, I said. This is Otis King, the engineer. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. Otis. I haven't heard that name since the tunnel project. I thought you retired. I did, I said. But I found a structural flaw, a big one. Talk to me, Otis. I need you to open a case file, I said. Target is Richard Harrington. Harrington Real Estate Holdings. I heard the sound of a keyboard clacking. I know the name, Miller said. We have flagged him for potential money laundering, but we never had the smoking gun. He is slippery. He moves money through shell companies faster than we can track it. I have the gun Miller, I said. And it is not a gun. It is a teddy bear. Excuse me, Miller asked. You heard me, I said. A teddy bear. A toy given to my 7-year-old granddaughter. I cut it open, Miller. It had a camera and a microphone, but that was just the surface. I dug deeper. Under the motherboard, there was a secondary chip, a skimmer, and a data relay node. I took a breath. I needed to explain this clearly. Richard Harrington isn't just washing his own money, I said. He is running a node for the cartel. He gives these toys to children of his wealthy clients. The bears connect to the home Wi-Fi. They harvest credit card numbers, banking passwords, and social security numbers from the parents' unsecure networks. Then they upload the data to a cloud server in the Caymans. The keyboard clacking on the other end stopped. That is insane, Miller whispered. That is brilliant. It gets worse, I said. The bears are registered as educational devices. The data traffic looks like software updates. He is using children as unsuspecting mules for digital theft. And he tried to use my granddaughter as the primary server. He was taking her out of the country not for a vacation but to physically transport the decryption key, which I believe is embedded in that watch she is wearing. Jesus, Miller hissed. Where are you, Otis? I am in a holding cell at the executive airfield in Chicago, I said. Local PD arrested me for stopping the plane. They think I am a senile old man harassing a nice rich family. And where is the bear, Miller asked. The bear is destroyed, I said, but the memory card. The card with the source code and the recordings of him admitting to the scheme. That is in a safe place. I gave him the coordinates of my digital dead drop. Otis Miller said, his voice grim. Sit tight. Do not say a word to the local cops. They might be on Harrington's payroll. I am mobilizing a field team out of the Chicago office right now. We are coming. I hung up the phone. The guard was staring at me. Who was that? The guard asked. The exterminator, I said. I went back to my cell. I sat down. The waiting began. Outside these walls, I knew exactly what was happening. My mind is a projector, and I could see the scene in high definition. Richard and Tiffany were celebrating. They were probably at the Harrington mansion right now. They would be drinking expensive champagne that they bought on credit. They would be laughing about the crazy old man rotting in jail. Richard would be on the phone with his loan shark, Vinny. He would be saying, "It is done, Vinny. The old man is out of the way, the son is compliant, we get the house tomorrow." And Marcus, my poor weak son, he would be sitting at the dining room table. He would have a pen in his hand. In front of him would be a stack of documents, the power of attorney, the quitclaim deed to my brownstone. Tiffany would be standing behind him, massaging his shoulders. She would be whispering in his ear, "Do it for us, baby. Do it for Maya. Your dad is gone. He doesn't need that big house. We can sell it and start over. We can be happy." And Marcus would believe her, because he needed to believe her. If he admitted the truth to himself that he had betrayed his father for a lie, he would shatter. So he would sign. He would scratch his name on the paper and sell his birthright for a promise that was as empty as his wife's heart. I clenched my fists. I felt a tear run down my cheek. Not for me, for him. He was losing his soul, and he didn't even know it. Night fell. The holding cell got colder. The buzz of the light got louder. I didn't sleep. I sat vigil. I thought about Maya. I hoped she was safe. I hoped the police had put her in protective custody or with a social worker. If Richard had her, I pushed that thought away. 24 hours passed, then 36. They brought me a sandwich. It tasted like cardboard. I ate it. Fuel is fuel. 48 hours. I was tired. My joints ached. The doubt started to creep in. Maybe Miller didn't believe me. Maybe Richard had gotten to him too. Maybe I really was just an old man shouting at clouds. Then I heard it. The heavy clank of the main security door opening at the end of the hallway. Footsteps. Not the shuffling walk of the guard. These were hard, purposeful steps. Leather soles on concrete. Multiple people. I stood up. I walked to the bars. The guard came into view. He looked pale. He was walking backward, almost bowing. Behind him were 4 men in suits. Real suits. Charcoal and navy, tailored. They didn't look like local cops. They looked like government. The man in the front was tall, with silver hair and eyes that had seen everything. He looked at the clipboard in his hand, then he looked at me. "Mr. King," he said. I nodded. The man turned to the guard. "Open it." "But sir," the guard stammered, "the captain said he is to be transferred to the psychiatric ward at noon." The man in the suit reached into his jacket. He pulled out a badge. It was gold, and it caught the light. "I am Special Agent Vance, FBI. This man is a federal witness and a cooperating asset. You are going to open this door, and then you are going to forget you ever saw us, or I will have you indicted for obstruction of justice alongside the Harringtons." The guard fumbled with his keys. He dropped them once. He picked them up, his hands shaking. He unlocked the door. It swung open with a screech. Agent Vance stepped into the cell. He didn't look at the toilet or the dirty cot. He looked me in the eye. He extended his hand. "Otis King," he said. "Miller sends his regards." I shook his hand. His grip was firm. "Did you get the card?" I asked. Vance nodded. "We got it. We decrypted it an hour ago. The audio is crystal clear, Otis. We heard everything. The abuse, the fraud, the conspiracy to commit theft, And the financial data, I asked. Vance smiled. A shark's smile. It is a gold mine. We have traced the IP addresses from the bear. Richard Harrington has been laundering money for the Sinaloa cartel for 3 years. He is not just a fraud, Otis. He is a dead man walking. I let out a breath I had been holding for 2 days. My shoulders dropped. What about my granddaughter, I asked. That is all I care about. Vance put a hand on my shoulder. We have a team en route to the Harrington estate right now. We tracked the watch. She is there. I need to go, I said. I need to be there when you take them down. Vance hesitated. It is a tactical operation, Mr. King. It could be dangerous. I looked at him. I built the trap, Agent Vance. I deserve to see it snap shut. Vance looked at me for a long moment. He saw the resolve. He saw the engineer who had calculated every angle. He nodded. All right, but you stay in the car until I say clear. I walked out of the cell. I didn't look back at the guard. I walked through the precinct. I saw the local detectives staring at me, mouths open, as the FBI escorted the crazy old man out the front door. Outside, the air was fresh. It smelled of rain and exhaust fumes. A convoy of black SUVs was waiting. I climbed into the back of the lead vehicle. The leather seat was soft. Vance got in beside me. He handed me a bottle of water. You look like you could use a drink, he said. I took a sip. It was cold and clean. We are going to make a stop first, Vance said. We need to pick up the signed documents to complete the chain of evidence. I looked at him. Documents. Marcus signed them, I asked. Vance nodded. He signed them this morning. The electronic notification hit the county clerk's office an hour ago. The sale is pending. I closed my eyes. Marcus had done it. He had betrayed me. Good, I said softly. Vance looked surprised. Good. Yes, I said, opening my eyes. Now he is an accomplice. I looked out the window as the convoy began to move. We were a line of black sharks swimming through traffic. I wasn't a father anymore. I wasn't a grandfather. I was a force of nature. And I was coming home. The suit they gave me back at the precinct was wrinkled and smelled faintly of the evidence locker. It was my best charcoal wool suit, the one I wore to church and to board meetings, but now it felt like a costume. And in a way it was. I was about to give the performance of a lifetime. Special Agent Vance had wired me up before I left the station. There was a microphone taped to my chest right under my sternum and a tiny transmitter in my watch buckle. Just remember, Otis Vance had said, you have to get them to admit it. We have the data, but we need the intent. Let them gloat. Let them think they have won. Arrogance is the best confession. I sat in the back of the town car Marcus had sent for me. It wasn't the police cruiser this time. It was a black Lincoln. They were treating me like a VIP because today was payday. Today was the day the stubborn old mule finally broke and handed over the gold. We pulled up to a glass skyscraper in the financial district. I knew this building. I had consulted on the wind shear dampers for it back in '98. It was a fortress of steel and ego. The Harrington's lawyer had an office on the 45th floor. I walked into the lobby. My steps were slow. I let my shoulders slump. I let a tremor creep into my hands. I wasn't just Otis King the engineer anymore. I was Otis King, the defeated, senile old man. The man they wanted me to be. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened, I was greeted by a wall of marble and the smell of expensive coffee and leather. A receptionist with a smile that cost more than my car ushered me into the main conference room. They were all there, the whole cast of vultures. Richard Harrington was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window looking out at the city he thought he owned. He was wearing a navy suit that fit him too well for a man who was technically bankrupt. Sylvia was sitting at the long mahogany table, scrolling through her phone, looking bored. Tiffany was pacing her heels, clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor. And Marcus, my son, was sitting in the corner staring at a glass of water. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 days. He didn't look up when I walked in. Well, look who decided to join the real world, Richard said, turning around. He flashed a bright, predatory smile. How was Jail Otis? Did the food meet your standards? I didn't answer immediately. I shuffled to a chair and sat down heavily. I let out a long, ragged sigh. It was cold, I muttered. My voice was raspy. I made sure to sound weak. Richard laughed. He walked over and poured a glass of water, placing it in front of me with mock tenderness. We tried to warn you, Otis. We told you that fighting us was a bad idea, but you always were stubborn. I just want to go home, I said, looking down at my hands. I just want this to be over. Tiffany stopped pacing. She walked over to the table and leaned in close. Her perfume was overpowering. It is over, Otis, she said, as soon as you sign the papers. The police have agreed to drop the disorderly conduct charges and the assault charges provided you voluntarily enter the assisted living facility and transfer the assets to Marcus. She slid a thick stack of documents across the polished table. It is a generous deal, Dad, Marcus said from the corner. His voice was hollow. Please, just sign it so we can all move on. I looked at Marcus. Move on. That was the phrase cowards used when they wanted to bury their sins. I reached for the papers. My hand shook uncontrollably. I saw Richard exchange a glance with Sylvia. A look of triumph. They were buying it. They believed the night in jail had broken me. I put on my reading glasses. I pretended to struggle with the text. This says, full power of attorney, I read slowly. And irrevocable transfer of the brownstone deed. Standard procedure, Sylvia said, examining her fingernails. You are incapacitated, Otis. You can't manage your own affairs. We are doing you a favor by taking this burden off your shoulders. A favor I repeated. Yes, Richard said. He sat down opposite me. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with greed. Think about it, Otis. You don't have to worry about bills. You don't have to worry about repairs. You can just relax. Golden Horizons is a beautiful facility. They have a garden. You like gardens, right? I looked at him. I looked at the man who had broken into my house and gassed himself, the man who was laundering money for cartels, and the trust I asked, the trust for Maya. Richard waved his hand dismissively. We will handle that, as her parents Marcus and Tiffany will be the new trustees. We will make sure the assets are allocated correctly. Allocated correctly, I thought, meaning liquidated to pay off Vinny the loan shark. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy Mont Blanc, a writer's tool, a signer's tool. Tiffany watched the pen like a hawk watching a field mouse. Sign right there, she said, pointing to the bottom of the page with a manicured nail. The X mark. I hovered the pen over the paper. I let the tip tremble just millimeters above the line. I don't know, I whispered. It feels final. Oh, for God's sake, Tiffany snapped. Just sign it, you old fool. We don't have all day. The jet is waiting to take us back to the airfield. We are losing time. Don't yell at him, Tiff, Marcus said softly. Shut up, Marcus, Tiffany hissed. She turned back to me. Her eyes were hard and cold. Listen to me, Otis. You have two choices. You sign this paper and you go to a nice room with a TV and 3 meals a day. Or you don't sign and we let the district attorney file those assault charges. You will die in prison. Is that what you want? Do you want to die in a cage? I looked at her. I saw the desperation behind the threat. She needed this signature. Without it, she was nothing. I looked at Richard. He was checking his watch. Vinny is waiting, isn't he? I asked softly. Richard froze. What did you say? I cleared my throat. I sat up a little straighter. I said your creditors are waiting. That is why you are in such a rush. You need this asset on your books by 5 p.m., or they start breaking legs. Richard's face darkened. I don't know what you are talking about. You are rambling again. Sign the paper. I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. I lowered the pen to the paper. The tip touched the fiber. Tiffany let out a breath. Richard leaned in. Then I stopped. I lifted the pen. I capped it with a loud, distinct click. The sound echoed in the silent room. What are you doing? Sylvia asked, sitting up straighter. I placed the pen gently on the table. I took off my reading glasses and folded them. I smoothed my jacket. The tremor in my hands was gone. The slump in my shoulders was gone. I looked at Richard. I looked at him with the clear, sharp eyes of the man who built skyscrapers. I can't sign this, I said. My voice was steady. It was deep. It was the voice of Otis King. Why not? Richard demanded, standing up. Because I said, reaching into my leather satchel that I had placed by my feet. It would be fraud. Fraud, Tiffany laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. You are the fraud claiming you are sane. No, I said. I pulled out a blue folder. It wasn't the legal documents. It was the dossier Miller had given me. The credit report. The loan shark list. the forensic accounting of their shell companies. I tossed the folder onto the mahogany table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped right in front of Richard. "I can't transfer an asset to a bankrupt entity," I said. "It is against the law. And I am a law-abiding citizen." Richard looked at the folder. He didn't want to touch it. "What is this?" he asked. "It is a parting gift," I said. "Open it," I commanded. Richard opened the folder. He saw the numbers. He saw the names. Vulture Capital, the offshore accounts, the negative balances. His face went gray. It was the color of old ash. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. I didn't answer him. I turned to Tiffany. "And for you, my dear," I said. I pulled out a USB drive. I placed it on top of the folder. "The bear," I said. Tiffany's eyes went wide. She took a step back. "You destroyed it," she said. "You said you cut it open." "I did," I said. "But I kept the heart and the brain." I leaned forward. "I heard you, Tiffany. I heard you telling your mother how you pinch Maya. I heard you coaching her to lie. I heard you plotting to drug me. And more importantly, the FBI heard you too." The room went deadly silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. You could hear the traffic 45 floors down. "FBI?" Sylvia asked. Her voice trembled. "Yes," I said. "You thought you were dealing with a senile old man. You forgot that I spent 40 years working on government contracts. I have clearance levels you don't even know exist." Richard slammed the folder shut. "This is a bluff," he shouted. "He is lying. He is trying to scare us. Call security. Get him out of here." I didn't move. I stayed seated. I looked at Marcus. Marcus was looking at the folder. He was looking at his father-in-law. "He is broke, Marcus," I asked my son. Marcus looked up. Tears were streaming down his face. "I told you, Dad," Marcus whispered. "I told you, but I didn't want to believe it." Richard lunged for the phone on the console. "I am calling the police," Richard yelled. "I am having you arrested for industrial espionage." "Go ahead, Richard," I said calmly. "But you might want to look out the window first." Richard stopped. He looked at me. Then he looked at the window. "Why?" he asked. "Because I said," checking my watch, "Agent Vance hates to be kept waiting, and according to my timeline, the elevator should be arriving right about now." Ding! The elevator doors in the lobby opened. We heard the heavy footsteps. Not lawyers, not clients, tactical boots. Richard ran to the door of the conference room. He threw it open. He stopped dead. Standing in the reception area were 12 federal agents. They were wearing FBI windbreakers. They were holding warrants. And in the front, holding a pair of handcuffs, was Special Agent Vance. Richard slammed the door shut. He locked it. He backed away, his eyes wild. "They are here," he gasped. Tiffany screamed. It was a primal sound of terror. She ran to the window as if she could fly away. I stood up. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen. I slipped it into my pocket. "I told you," I said to the room of trapped rats. "I inspect foundations, and when I find rot, I don't patch it. I condemn the building." I looked at Marcus. He was sitting with his head in his hands, sobbing quietly. I walked over to him. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Stand up, son," I said. He looked up at me. "I can't," he whispered. "I helped them. I know," I said, "and you will pay for that. But today you are going to stand up and watch the walls fall down, because that is the only way you are ever going to build something real." The door handle rattled. Then came the pounding. "FBI, open up." Richard looked at me. He looked at the folder on the table. He looked at his life dissolving. "You planned this," he hissed. "You planned this whole thing, the jail, the surrender. It was all a trap." I walked to the door. I reached for the lock. I looked back at Richard one last time. "I didn't plan it, Richard," I said. "I just engineered it." I unlocked the door and stepped aside. The agents flooded the room. The air was filled with shouting. "Hands on your heads! Get down, federal agents!" I stood against the wall watching the chaos. I watched Tiffany being handcuffed, screaming that her father made her do it. I watched Richard being shoved against the glass he loved so much. And I felt nothing. No joy, no triumph. Just the cold, hard satisfaction of a job done right. The structure was unsafe. It had to come down. And now the demolition was complete. The blue folder sat on the polished mahogany table like a landmine waiting for a footstep. Richard Harrington stared at it. His hands were hovering over the cover. He looked at me, and then he looked at the folder. He was expecting a surrender. He was expecting the deed to my brownstone. He was expecting a check that would save his drowning empire. He did not know that he was staring at his own death warrant. "Go ahead, Richard," I said softly. "Open it. You wanted assets. You wanted liquidity. Well, there it is." Richard's fingers twitched. He flipped the cover open. I watched his eyes. They scanned the first page. It was a standard header. Notice of assignment of debt. Then his eyes moved down to the numbers. $3 million in outstanding loans. Then his eyes moved to the creditor's name. He frowned. He flipped the page. Then another. The frown deepened into a scowl of confusion. "What is this?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "This is my mortgage. This is my business loan with Vulture Capital. This is my credit line with the private equity firm in Jersey. Keep reading, Richard," I said. "Look at the bottom line. Look at the new holder of the note." He turned to the last page. He squinted. He read the name of the holding company that had purchased his toxic debt packages 3 days ago. OK Structural Holdings, LLC. He looked up at me. He blinked. "OK. Holdings," he whispered. "Otis King." "That cannot be right," he said. He laughed a nervous, brittle sound. "You are a retired construction worker. You live on a pension. You don't have $3 million to buy bad debt." I leaned back in my chair. I crossed my hands over my chest. I felt the cool, reassuring weight of the Mont Blanc pen in my pocket. "You are right, Richard," I said. "I am a construction worker. I pour concrete. I weld steel. But you forgot one thing about people like me. We build the places where people like you keep your money." I pointed at the window at the skyline of Chicago. In 1982, I was the lead structural engineer for the First National Bank Tower. The bank didn't have enough liquidity to pay the contractors, so they offered us stock options. Most of the guys wanted cash. They sold. I leaned forward. I kept mine, Richard. I kept them for 40 years. I reinvested every dividend. I lived quietly. I drove a Buick. I wore old suits. While you were leasing Mercedes and throwing parties, I was letting compound interest do the heavy lifting. Richard's face was losing color rapidly. It was turning a sickly shade of gray. "So yes," I said, "I am the silent shareholder of the bank that holds your mortgage, and when I saw your name on the distressed asset list last week, I made a call. I bought it all, Richard. I bought your house. I bought your car. I bought the very suit you are wearing. You bought my debt." Richard stammered. "No," I said. "I bought your life." Sylvia was sitting next to him. She grabbed the folder. She scanned the pages frantically. Her hands were shaking so hard the papers rattled like dry leaves in a storm. "What does this mean, Richard?" she shrieked. "What does it mean he is the holder?" "It means Mrs. Harrington," I said, turning my gaze to her, "that I am calling the note." "Calling the note," Richard whispered. "You can't. The term is immediate upon evidence of insolvency," I said, cutting him off. "And since you missed your last 3 payments, you are in default." I checked my watch. As of 9 a.m. this morning, my lawyers filed the foreclosure paperwork. I looked at Tiffany. She was standing by the window, frozen. Her mouth was open. "You know that big gate at your estate, Tiffany?" I asked. "The one you wouldn't let me drive through on Christmas because my car was too old." She stared at me. "My security team changed the locks on it 20 minutes ago," I said. "You can't go home. Your key won't work. The staff has been dismissed. The assets are frozen pending auction." Sylvia let out a sound that was not human. It was a high-pitched wail of pure despair. She stood up, clutching her chest. "My house," she gasped. "My clothes, my jewelry." "They belong to me now," I said coldly. "And I don't wear jewelry. So I guess they will be sold to pay for the legal fees of the man you tried to frame." Sylvia's eyes rolled back in her head. She swayed. She reached out for Richard, but he was too stunned to catch her. She collapsed onto the expensive Persian rug with a dull thud. Mom Tiffany screamed. She ran to her mother. Richard didn't move. He didn't look at his wife. He looked at me. The shock was fading, replaced by a raw, primal fury. He had lost everything. His status, his home, his pride. And the man who took it wasn't a bank or a faceless corporation. It was the old black man he had called a relic. "You son of a bitch," Richard snarled. He slammed his fist onto the table. The water glasses jumped. "You ruined me," he shouted. "You planned this. You set me up." "I didn't set you up, Richard," I said calmly. "You built a house on sand. All I did was kick the door in." Richard's face twisted into a mask of hate. He lost control. The veneer of the civilized businessman vanished. He was just a cornered animal now. "I will kill you," he roared. He lunged across the table. He was big and he was fueled by adrenaline. He scrambled over the mahogany, reaching for my throat. His fingers were curled into claws. He wanted to crush me. He wanted to silence the truth. I braced myself. I was ready to fight. I still had the strength of a man who worked with iron, but I didn't have to fight. A blur of motion came from the corner of the room. It was Marcus, my son who had spent his whole life cowering, my son who had let them walk all over him, my son who had sat in silence while they abused his daughter. He moved faster than I had ever seen him move. He intercepted Richard midair. He slammed his shoulder into Richard's chest with the force of a linebacker. "Get off him," Marcus screamed. They crashed onto the floor. The table shook. Papers flew everywhere. Richard was on top, flailing, punching wildly. But Marcus was younger, and Marcus had something Richard didn't have. He had rage. Years of suppressed rage. Years of being told he wasn't good enough. Years of watching his wife look at her father with adoration and look at him with pity. Marcus grabbed Richard by the lapels of his expensive suit and slammed him into the floor. "Don't you touch him!" Marcus yelled. His voice broke. "Don't you dare touch my father!" Richard gasped for air. He looked up at Marcus with shock. He had never seen this side of his son-in-law. He thought Marcus was a domesticated dog. He forgot that dogs have teeth. "Marcus," Richard wheezed. "Get off me! I am your father-in-law!" "You are nothing," Marcus spat. "You are a fraud. You used me. You used my daughter." Marcus raised his fist. For a second I thought he was going to hit him. I thought he was going to beat the man who had enslaved him. "Marcus." "No," I said sharply. Marcus froze. His fist was trembling in the air. He looked down at Richard. Then he looked at me. "He is not worth it, son," I said. "Don't get blood on your hands. We have already won." Marcus slowly lowered his hand. He was breathing hard. He stood up, adjusting his tie. He looked down at Richard, who was lying on the floor, disheveled and broken. "It is over," Richard, Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it was heavy. Tiffany looked up from her unconscious mother. She looked at Marcus with wide, terrified eyes. She had never seen him like this. "Marcus," she whimpered, "help me. Mom is not waking up." Marcus looked at his wife. He looked at the woman who had pinched their daughter. He looked at the woman who had called his father a senile old fool. He didn't move to help her. "Call 911. Tiffany, Marcus said coldly. "That is what you do when there is an emergency, right? Unless you want to blame my dad for her fainting too." Tiffany flinched as if he had slapped her. I stood up. I walked over to Richard. He was trying to crawl backward away from Marcus. I looked down at him. "I told you I wasn't selling my house, Richard," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive I had shown them earlier. "And I told you I wasn't just an investor." I dropped the USB drive onto his chest. "I am the demolition crew. And you are just the rubble." Richard closed his eyes. He knew. He knew that the FBI agents were outside. He knew that the bank was taking his home. He knew that his family was destroyed. I looked at Marcus. He was standing tall. His shoulders were back. He looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw my reflection in his eyes. "I am sorry, Dad," Marcus whispered. I walked over to him. I put my hand on his arm. "You stood up," I said. "That is all that matters. You stood up." The door behind us pounded again. FBI opened the door. Now I looked at the chaos in the room. Sylvia passed out, Tiffany crying, Richard defeated on the floor. "Let them in, son," I said to Marcus. Marcus walked to the door. He unlocked it. The agents swarmed in. But the real justice had already been served, not by the law, but by a father and a son who finally found their foundation. I watched as they handcuffed Richard. I watched as the paramedics rushed in for Sylvia, and I smiled, not a happy smile, a builder's smile, the kind you have when you tear down a rotten structure so you can finally start building something that will last. Tiffany Harrington did not go down quietly. Even with the FBI agents securing the room and her mother unconscious on the floor, she still believed she could talk her way out of gravity. She stood by the window, her hands clenched into fists, her face twisted into a mask of pure entitlement. She looked at the blue folder of financial ruin I had thrown on the table, and then she looked at me with eyes that were trying to burn a hole through my chest. "You are a fraud." "Otis," she screamed, her voice cracked, breaking the heavy silence of the room. "This is illegal. You hacked our accounts. You stole private documents. I will sue you. I will sue you for everything you have. You think you can walk in here and destroy my family with some fake papers and a thumb drive? You are nothing but a senile old man playing spy." She turned to the FBI agents. "Why aren't you arresting him?" she demanded, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He is the criminal here. He is blackmailing us. He is mentally unstable. Look at him. He is enjoying this. I was enjoying it, but not in the way she thought. I wasn't enjoying the pain. I was enjoying the structural integrity of the truth." I didn't answer her threats. I didn't look at the agents. I walked over to the sleek control panel built into the wall of the conference room. I knew how these systems worked. I had wired buildings just like this one. I tapped the screen. The lights in the room dimmed automatically. The heavy motorized blinds descended, cutting off the view of the city and plunging us into a twilight gloom. "What are you doing?" Richard shouted. He was handcuffed now, sitting in a chair, but he was still trying to exert authority. "Stop this nonsense." I pressed the button labeled Source HDMI 2. The massive 90-inch screen at the head of the room flickered to life. It bathed the room in a cold blue light. I plugged the USB drive into the port on the console. "You wanted to talk about evidence, Tiffany?" I said, my voice low and steady in the darkened room. "You wanted to talk about who the real criminal is." I tapped the play button on the remote. "Let's watch a movie," I said. The video started. The image was grainy at first, shot from a low angle. It was the view from inside a teddy bear's eye. The camera lens distorted the edges of the frame, but the center was crystal clear. The audio hissed, then popped. The scene was the living room of Marcus's house. I recognized the rug. I recognized the sofa. Tiffany appeared in the frame. She was wearing her yoga clothes, holding a glass of wine. She looked annoyed. Maya walked into the shot. She was wearing her pajamas. She was holding a coloring book. Mommy Maya said, "I am hungry." Tiffany didn't look up from her phone. "Go to bed," Tiffany snapped. "But I didn't have dinner," Maya said. I watched the real Tiffany standing in the conference room. She went silent. Her hand went to her mouth. On the screen, the Tiffany in the video put down her wine. She stood up. She towered over the camera view. She walked over to the little girl. "I told you to go to bed," Tiffany hissed. She grabbed Maya's arm. She didn't just grab it, she pinched. The camera microphone was high fidelity. It picked up the wet sound of skin being twisted. Maya screamed. It was a high, sharp sound that echoed off the walls of the conference room. On the screen, Tiffany leaned down. Her face was inches from Maya's face, inches from the hidden camera. We could see the dilation of her pupils. We could see the cruelty etched into the lines around her mouth. "You don't get dinner until you memorize the code," Tiffany whispered. "What is the code for Grandpa's safe?" "I don't know," Maya sobbed, clutching her arm. "Grandpa never told me." Tiffany pinched her again, harder this time. We watched Maya's knees buckle. We watched her fall to the floor, crying. "Think harder," Tiffany said. "Or do you want another bruise to match the one on your other arm?" I paused the video. The image froze on Tiffany's face, distorted by rage looming over a crying child. The conference room was deadly quiet. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan and the jagged breathing of the people in the room. I looked at the FBI agents. They were professionals trained to be stoic, but I saw their jaws tighten. I saw one agent look at Tiffany with pure disgust. "That is out of context," Tiffany whispered. Her voice was barely audible. She was shaking her head. I was disciplining her. She was being difficult. I didn't argue. I pressed next. The scene changed. The timestamp showed it was 2 days ago. The location was the kitchen. Richard Harrington was leaning against the counter holding a scotch. Tiffany was chopping vegetables. The audio was clear. "He is taking too long," Richard said. The bank called again. "We have a week, Tiffany. If the old goat doesn't sign the papers by Friday, we are finished." "I know, Dad," Tiffany replied. "But he is stubborn. He suspects something. He wouldn't eat the soup." Richard took a sip of his drink. "Then we need to be more direct," Richard said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial. He held it up to the light. "This isn't Valium," he said. "This is digoxin. It mimics a heart attack. If we put this in his coffee, his heart will just stop. At his age, nobody will question it. No autopsy. Just a grieving family inheriting a fortune." Tiffany stopped chopping vegetables. She looked at the vial. "Is it traceable?" she asked. "Not if we cremate him fast," Richard said. "And you will control the funeral arrangements." I paused the video again. I looked at Richard. He was slumped in his chair. His face was gray. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at the floor, realizing that he had just watched his own confession to conspiracy to commit murder. "That is a joke," Richard croaked. "A bad joke. I would never." "Save it for the jury," Richard Agent Vance said from the doorway. His voice was cold as ice. But I wasn't done. There was one more clip, the most important one. I looked at Marcus. He was standing by the door. He was staring at the screen with a look of horror that was slowly transforming into something else. Something shattering. "I have one more scene," I said. I pressed play. The video showed the living room again. It was the same night as the pinching incident. Tiffany was yelling at Maya. She was shaking her. Maya was crying, screaming for her daddy. "Daddy, help me!" Maya screamed on the video. "Mommy is hurting me." The camera panned slightly as the bear was knocked over. The angle shifted. It pointed toward the hallway. And there, standing in the doorway, was Marcus. He was wearing his work clothes. He was holding his briefcase. He saw everything. He saw his wife twisting his daughter's arm. He heard the screams. In the video, Marcus took a step forward. He opened his mouth. Tiffany looked up at him. Her eyes were wild. "Go back to the office, Marcus," she yelled. "This doesn't concern you. Unless you want to explain to your dad why we are bankrupt." Marcus stopped. He looked at his crying daughter. He looked at his wife. And then on the giant screen in high definition, we all watched Marcus turn around. He didn't fight. He didn't intervene. He walked away. He went upstairs and closed the door, leaving his daughter alone with her abuser. I let the video play for 10 more seconds so we could hear the sound of the door clicking shut while Maya continued to sob. Then I turned off the screen. The lights came back up slowly. The room felt different now. The air was charged with a violence that had nothing to do with fists. It was the violence of revelation. I looked at Marcus. He was standing in the exact same spot as he was in the video, but the man standing there now was not the man on the screen. He was trembling. His whole body was vibrating. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes were wide open. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking at the floor. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Tiffany. He looked at her like he had never seen her before. He looked at her like she was a stranger, a monster wearing human skin. Tiffany saw the look. She took a step back. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a choke. "Marcus, honey," she stammered. "You know how it is. I was stressed. You know I love her. I was just—" "You hit her," Marcus said. His voice was a whisper, but it carried more weight than a scream. "You hit my daughter." Tiffany held out her hands. "It was just a pinch, Marcus. Don't be dramatic. We were doing this for us. For our future. For us," Marcus repeated. He took a step toward her, then another. I stood there and watched. I didn't intervene. This was his structural test. "You hit her," Marcus said, his voice rising. "And you made me believe it was my fault. You made me believe I was crazy for thinking you were cruel. You made me believe my father was the enemy while you were torturing my child in the next room." "Marcus, please," Tiffany cried, backing into the corner. "And the poison," Marcus shouted. He pointed at Richard. "You were going to kill him. You were going to kill my dad." "We were desperate, son," Richard said from his chair. "We did it for the family." "Family," Marcus screamed. He grabbed a glass vase from the side table and hurled it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. "You are not my family. You are parasites." He turned back to Tiffany. He was standing inches from her now. She was cowering, shrinking down into the person she really was, a bully who had lost her power. "I stood outside that door," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "I stood there and I listened to her cry. And I walked away because I was afraid of you. I was afraid you would leave me. I was afraid of being poor." He looked at his hands. He looked at them with disgust. "I let you hurt her," he whispered. "I am just as bad as you." "No." "Marcus," Tiffany sobbed, reaching for him. "We can fix this. We can get a lawyer." "Don't touch me," Marcus roared. He recoiled from her touch as if she were acid. He turned to the FBI agents. "Arrest her," he said. His voice was shaking, but it was clear. "Arrest her for child abuse. Arrest her for conspiracy. And arrest me too." "Excuse me," Agent Vance asked, stepping forward. "Arrest me," Marcus said. He held out his hands. I knew. I knew she was abusive and I didn't stop it. That is child endangerment. That is negligence. I want to go to jail. Because if I stay in this room with her for one more second, I am going to do something that will put me there for life. I watched my son. My heart broke for him, but at the same time it swelled with a strange pride. The concrete had finally hardened. It took a catastrophe to do it, but the foundation was finally setting. Agent Vance nodded to his team. "Take Mrs. King into custody," Vance ordered. "And Mr. Harrington." Two agents grabbed Tiffany. She started screaming, kicking her legs. "You can't do this. My father knows the mayor. Marcus, help me." Marcus turned his back on her. He walked over to the window. He looked out at the city. He didn't look back as his wife was dragged out of the room in handcuffs. Richard was pulled from his chair. He didn't scream. He just looked at me. "You win, Otis," he muttered as he passed me. I didn't look at him. I was looking at my son. The room cleared out. The medics were wheeling Sylvia out on a stretcher. The agents were collecting the evidence. I walked over to the window. I stood next to Marcus. We stood there for a long time watching the traffic below. "I am sorry, Dad," Marcus whispered. He didn't turn his head. "I am so sorry." "I know, son," I said. "I saw the video," Marcus said. "I saw myself walking away. How do I live with that? How do I ever look Maya in the eye again?" I put my hand on his shoulder. I squeezed it hard. "You start by not walking away today," I said. "You start by testifying. You start by tearing down the lies." "But I am broken, Dad," Marcus said. I looked at his reflection in the glass. He looked tired. He looked old. But he looked real. "Broken things can be fixed," Marcus, I said. "I am an engineer. I know how to reinforce a structure. But first, you have to clear the rubble." I handed him a handkerchief. "Wipe your face," I said. "We have work to do." Marcus took the handkerchief. He wiped his eyes. He took a deep breath. "Where is Maya?" he asked. "She is safe," I said. "She is waiting for us." Marcus nodded. He buttoned his jacket. "Let's go then," he said. We walked out of the conference room together. The empty screen behind us was black. The movie was over. The nightmare was over. Now the cleanup began, and for the first time in years, I wasn't doing it alone. The video screen went black, but the image of Tiffany pinching my granddaughter was burned into every retina in the room. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a building collapses. You can hear the groaning of the steel beams giving way. You can hear the dust falling. And then, gravity takes over. The door to the conference room didn't just open, it exploded inward. The tactical team moved with a precision that was beautiful to watch. 12 agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. They didn't scream. They didn't panic. They shouted clear, concise commands that cut through the air like knives. "Federal agents, hands on your heads. Do it now." Richard Harrington was the first to break. He had spent his life bullying contractors and intimidating waiters, but when faced with real authority, he crumbled. He dropped to his knees. He put his hands on his head, interlacing his fingers so tight his knuckles turned white. He was shaking. The arrogant tycoon was gone, replaced by a terrified old man in a soiled suit. Tiffany was different. She didn't kneel. She stood by the window, frozen in shock. She couldn't process that her world of privilege had just evaporated. An agent moved toward her. He was a large man with no sense of humor. He grabbed her wrist. "Tiffany King." "You are under arrest," the agent said, spinning her around. "Get your hands off me," Tiffany shrieked. She tried to pull away. Her heels slipped on the polished floor. "Do you know who I am? My father is Richard Harrington. Call the mayor. Call my lawyer." Agent Vance walked into the room. He stepped over the pile of papers on the floor. He looked at Tiffany with a mixture of pity and disgust. "We know exactly who you are," Mrs. King Vance said. "You are the woman who just starred in a federal evidence video." Vance signaled to his team. "Read them the charges," he said. Another agent stepped forward holding a clipboard. He read in a loud, monotone voice, "Richard Harrington, Tiffany King, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, interstate racketeering, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit murder." Murder. Tiffany gasped. She stopped struggling. The word hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the room. "I didn't kill anyone. He is standing right there." She pointed at me. Vance walked up to her. He was inches from her face. "Attempted murder is the same charge in the eyes of the law," Mrs. King Vance said. "We heard the tape. Digoxin, mimicking a heart attack. You discussed the method. You procured the poison. That is intent. That is conspiracy. And that carries 25 years to life. Life." The word broke her. Tiffany's face crumbled. The mask of the victim fell away, revealing the rat underneath. She looked at Richard. She looked at her father kneeling on the floor. And then she did exactly what I knew she would do. She turned on him. It was his idea, she screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. It was all him. He made me do it. He said we were broke. He said we needed the money. I didn't want to hurt anyone. He gave me the poison. Richard looked up. His eyes bulged. "You lying witch!" Richard roared. He tried to stand up, but an agent pushed him back down. "You were the one who wanted the house. You were the one who pinched the girl. I told you to be gentle. You are the psychopath, Tiffany." "No," Tiffany yelled, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "I was protecting my inheritance. You are the one with the gambling debt. Officer, listen to me. I will testify. I will tell you everything." "He has accounts in the Caymans. He has a safe deposit box in Zurich. I know where the keys are. Just don't put me in jail. I have a child. I am a mother." "A mother?" Vance scoffed. He looked at the screen where the video had played. "You forfeited that title a long time ago." I watched them from the corner of the room. It was pathetic. It was grotesque. A father and daughter ripping each other apart, trying to use each other's bodies as stepping stones to avoid the inevitable. They had no loyalty. They had no honor. They were just appetites wrapped in expensive clothes. "Cuff them," Vance ordered. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the sweetest music I had ever heard. Tiffany wailed as the metal bit into her wrists. She was led past me. She looked at me. Her eyes were pleading now. "Otis," she sobbed. "Otis, please. Tell them. Tell them I am family. Tell them I took care of you." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had tried to erase my existence. "I don't know you," I said coldly. "And my family doesn't pinch children." She was dragged out, screaming my name, screaming Marcus's name, screaming for anyone to save her from the consequences of her own actions. Richard was next. He didn't scream. He wept. He wept for his money. He wept for his reputation. He didn't spare a single tear for the daughter he had corrupted or the granddaughter he had tried to traffic. "Get him out of here," Vance said. When the room cleared, it was suddenly very quiet. The storm had passed, leaving only the wreckage. Agent Vance walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay, Mr. King?" he asked. I nodded. "I am fine, Agent Vance." The structure held. Vance looked at the empty chair where Marcus was sitting, or where he had been standing. "We need to process the scene," Vance said. "You should go. Go see your granddaughter." "I will," I said. I turned to leave, but then I heard a sound. A soft, broken sound coming from the far corner of the room behind the overturned chairs. It was a sob. I walked over. Marcus was there. He was on his knees. He wasn't being arrested. No agent was holding him down. He had put himself there. He was curled into a ball, his forehead pressing against the floor. He was shaking violently. He looked small. He looked like the little boy who used to hide under the bed during thunderstorms. "Marcus," I said. He didn't look up. He couldn't. The shame was a physical weight crushing his spine. "Dad," he choked out. His voice was thick with tears. "Dad, I am sorry." I stood over him. I looked at my son. I saw the ruins of a man who had let himself be hollowed out by greed and fear. "I am sorry," Marcus repeated, sobbing harder. "I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't want to know. I let them do it. I let them hurt her. I am a coward, Dad. I am garbage." He reached out. He grabbed the hem of my pants. He buried his face in my shoe. "Please forgive me," he begged. "Please, Dad. I have nothing left. They took everything. I have no wife. I have no home. I am going to jail. Please, just tell me you forgive me. I looked down at him. My heart ached. Every instinct as a father wanted to kneel down. I wanted to wrap my arms around him. I wanted to tell him it was okay. I wanted to say, hush, son, we will fix it. But I couldn't. If I comforted him now, I would be comforting the weakness that caused this. If I picked him up, I would be carrying him for the rest of his life. He needed to learn how to carry himself. He needed to feel the cold, hard floor so he would never want to be down there again. I pulled my leg back, breaking his grip. Marcus looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked confused. He expected the hug. He expected the easy grace. I looked at him with eyes that were dry and hard. Stand up, I said. Marcus blinked. What? I said, stand up, I repeated. My voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. Don't you dare kneel, I said. You are a Washington. You are a king. Your grandfather picked cotton so you could wear that suit. I poured concrete for 40 years so you could go to college. We don't kneel, Marcus. We don't crawl. Marcus stared at me. He was trembling. But I failed you, he whispered. Yes, you did, I said. You failed me. You failed your daughter. You failed yourself. You broke the foundation, Marcus. I pointed at the door where Tiffany had been dragged out. But you are not them, I said. They are criminals. They are bad people. You are just a man who lost his way. A man who forgot who built him. I reached out a hand. I didn't grab him. I just held it there, waiting. If you want forgiveness, Marcus, you have to earn it, I said. And you can't earn it on your knees. You earn it by standing up. You earn it by facing what you did. You earn it by being a father to that little girl who is waiting for us. Marcus looked at my hand. He looked at my face. He saw the iron in my eyes, but he also saw the love. The tough, uncompromising love that refuses to let you be less than you are. He took a deep breath. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. He reached up. He grabbed my hand. His grip was weak at first, but I squeezed back. I let him feel my strength. I let him borrow it for a moment. He pulled himself up. He stumbled, but he caught his balance. He stood before me. He was taller than me, but for the first time in years, he wasn't looking down on me. He was looking up to me. I am sorry, Dad, he said again. This time he was looking me in the eye. I know, son, I said. I adjusted his tie. I brushed the dust off his shoulder. Fix your face, I said. We are going to get Maya. She doesn't need to see you crying. She needs to see her father. Marcus nodded. He took a breath. He straightened his back. Is she okay? He asked. She is a king, I said. She is tough. She just needs to know she is safe. And am I? Marcus asked. Am I safe? I looked at the door where the agents were waiting. You are going to face charges, son, I said honestly. You were negligent. You signed papers you shouldn't have. You might do time. Marcus swallowed hard. He nodded. But I said, putting my hand on the back of his neck, you won't do it alone. I will hire the best lawyer in the city, not to get you off, but to get you fair. And when you get out, I paused. When you get out, the brownstone will be there. The foundation will be there. And I will be there. Marcus's lip quivered. He tried to hold it back. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me, I said, turning toward the door. Show me. We walked out of the conference room. We walked past the agents. We walked past the ruins of the Harrington Empire. We walked out into the hallway where the elevator was waiting. I pressed the button. Going down, Marcus asked. No, I said as the doors opened. We are going up. We are going to get your daughter. And then we are going to start rebuilding. The doors closed. And as the elevator began to move, I felt the shift. The weight was gone. The rot was gone. It was just us. The concrete and the steel. Scarred, battered, but still standing. The drive from the city to the Harrington estate was quiet. Marcus sat in the passenger seat of my Buick, staring out the window. He had taken off his tie. He had unbuttoned his collar. He looked like a soldier returning from a war he had lost. I didn't turn on the radio. The hum of the engine was enough. I wanted him to sit with his thoughts. I wanted him to feel the weight of the silence, because that is where the truth lives. We turned onto the private road that led to the mansion. The iron gates stood open. The locks I had ordered changed were gleaming in the afternoon sun, but there was something else on the gate, a bright orange sticker, sealed by order of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I pulled the car up the long, winding driveway. We passed the manicured lawns. We passed the fountains that used to spray water into the air like liquid diamonds. They were dry now. The pumps had been shut off. I parked in front of the main entrance. The house was massive, a sprawling neoclassical monstrosity with pillars that were too big and windows that were too high. It was designed to impress. It was designed to intimidate. "Get out, son," I said. Marcus opened the door. He stepped onto the gravel. He looked up at the house where he had spent every holiday for the last 7 years. The house where he had married Tiffany. The house where he thought he belonged. "It looks different," Marcus whispered. "It looks dead," I said. I walked up the steps. I didn't need a key. I had the deed in my pocket, but the feds had already swept the place. The front door was taped shut with evidence tape. I stood on the porch and looked out over the estate. "Do you know why I never liked this house, Marcus?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "Because it is big. Because it is showy." "No," I said. I tapped the pillar next to me with my knuckle. It made a hollow sound. "Because it is fake," I said. Marcus looked at the pillar. "This isn't stone," I said. "It is fiberglass wrapped around a wood frame. And the stucco, it is synthetic. If you poke it hard enough, your finger will go right through." I walked over to the edge of the porch. I pointed down at the foundation line hidden behind the expensive bushes. "And the foundation," I continued. "I checked the blueprints years ago. They poured a shallow slab, Marcus, 6 inches, on top of landfill. The soil here is soft. It shifts every time it rains." I turned to face him. "They built a castle on a swamp, son. They spent millions on the facade, on the gold leaf, on the marble floors. But they spent pennies on the thing that actually holds it up." Marcus looked at the house. He saw it now through my eyes. He saw the hairline cracks in the stucco. He saw the way the roof line sagged just a fraction of an inch in the middle. "That is why they fell, Marcus," I said. "Not because of me, not because of the FBI. We just sped up the process. They were always going to fall. Because you cannot build a life on debt and lies. Gravity always wins." Marcus sat down on the steps. He put his head in his hands. "I believed them," he said softly. "I believed everything. I thought this was success." I sat down next to him. "Success isn't what you show people, Marcus," I said. "Success is what you stand on." Marcus looked at me. His eyes were red. "I have nothing." "Dad," he said. His voice cracked. "I signed the divorce papers an hour ago. Tiffany is gone. The money is gone. My job? Once this hits the news, I will be fired. I am 38 years old and I am homeless." He took a jagged breath. "And Maya, if I lose custody, if the court thinks I am unfit, I will lose the only thing that matters." He started to cry again. Quiet, desperate tears. I looked at my son. I saw the terror in his eyes. The terror of a man who realizes he has been running a race in the wrong direction. "You are not homeless," I said. Marcus looked up. "You have a room," I said, "in the brownstone. It is small. It smells like old books and pipe tobacco. But the floor is solid oak and the foundation goes down 12 feet into bedrock." Marcus wiped his eyes. "You would let me come back, after everything I did." I put my arm around his shoulders. "You broke my heart, Marcus," I said honestly, "but you are my blood. And kings don't abandon their own. We fix them." I pointed at the sealed mansion. "That is their legacy," I said, an empty shell with a police sticker on the door. Then I pointed to the west toward the city where my house stood. "And that is your legacy, a home that is paid for, a father who loves you, and a daughter who needs you to be strong." Marcus leaned into me. He rested his head on my shoulder like he used to when he was a boy. "I was so stupid, Dad," he whispered. "I traded concrete for candy floss." "We all get seduced by the shine sometimes, son," I said. "The important thing is that you woke up before the roof caved in on your head." I stood up. I brushed the dust off my pants. "Come on," I said, where Marcus asked, standing up. "To get your daughter," I said. "She is at the safe house with the social worker. We need to go pick her up. And then we are going home." Marcus looked at the mansion one last time. He looked at the hollow pillars and the dry fountain. "Burn it down," he said softly. "No," I said. "We let it rot. Let it stand as a monument to what happens when you forget who you are." We walked back to the car. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the driveway. As I started the engine, Marcus looked at me. "Dad," he said. "Yeah." "Can you teach me?" he asked. "Can you teach me how to check a foundation?" I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in weeks. "I can teach you, son," I said, "but you have to be willing to get your hands dirty." "I am ready," Marcus said. I put the car in gear. We drove away, leaving the fake empire behind us in the rearview mirror. We were heading towards something real, something permanent. We were heading home. 3 months is not a long time in the life of a building. It is barely enough time for the concrete to fully cure. But in the life of a family, 3 months can be an eternity. It is enough time for a winter to turn into spring. It is enough time for a scar to form over a wound. And it is enough time to realize that silence is not empty. It is heavy with peace. I sat in my armchair in the corner of the living room, the same chair where I had planned my war against the Harringtons. But the room felt different now. The shadows were gone. The curtains were open, letting the afternoon sun spill across the hardwood floors. The house was noisy, not the noise of arguments or deception. It was the noise of life. 7 children were running around my dining room table. There was shouting. There was laughter. There was the sound of wrapping paper being torn apart. It was Maya's birthday party, the real one. There were no catering trucks outside. There were no influencers taking selfies. There were no business associates trying to close deals over champagne. It was just pizza boxes stacked on the counter and a chocolate cake that I had baked myself. It was lopsided and the frosting was too thick, but when I brought it out, Maya looked at it like it was a masterpiece. I watched her from my chair. She looked different than she did 3 months ago. She had gained a little weight, her cheeks were full again. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. And the bruises on her arms had faded into bad memories. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. She didn't look like a doll dressed up for display. She looked like a child. She looked like a king. The court battle had been brutal but short. With the video evidence and Tiffany's confession regarding the poison, the judge didn't hesitate. Tiffany was currently awaiting trial in a federal detention center. She had been denied bail. Richard was in the cell block next to her. They had turned on each other, completely offering testimony against one another in a race to see who could get a plea deal. Their empire of lies had collapsed, just as I predicted. And Marcus. I took a sip of my coffee. It was black and bitter, just the way I like it. Marcus was not in jail. I had spent a considerable amount of my savings on a defense attorney who argued that he was a victim of coercive control. The judge was lenient. He gave Marcus probation. But I gave him a sentence. I sent him to a facility in Arizona. It wasn't a prison and it wasn't a spa. It was a behavioral rehabilitation center, a place where men go to find their spines. No phones, no internet, no luxury. Just hard work therapy and the brutal task of facing yourself in the mirror every morning without looking away. He had been there for 80 days. "Grandpa, look." Maya's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. She ran over to me holding a box. It was the last gift. My gift. It wasn't wrapped in gold paper. It was wrapped in the Sunday comics. "Open it, baby," I said. She tore the paper. Her eyes went wide. It wasn't a teddy bear. It wasn't a doll that could talk or a watch that could track her. It was a Lego architecture set. 3,000 pieces. The Empire State Building. "Legos," she whispered. I leaned forward. "Do you know why I got you?" that I asked. She looked at me and shook her head. "Because I want you to learn how to build," I said. "I want you to learn that if you want something to stand tall, you have to put the pieces together one by one. You have to be patient. You have to follow the plan. And if it falls down, you don't cry. You just build it again stronger." Maya opened the box. She poured the thousands of gray plastic bricks onto the rug. The sound was like rain on a tin roof. A beautiful, chaotic sound. "Can you help me?" she asked. I smiled. I slid off my chair and sat on the floor next to her. My knees complained, but I didn't care. "Foundation first," I said, picking up a large flat plate. "We always start with the foundation." We spent the next hour sitting there. The other kids had gone home. The house was quiet again, except for the click-snap-click of the bricks. Maya was focused. She frowned in concentration, her tongue poking out of the corner of her mouth. She looked exactly like Marcus used to look when he was 7. before the world got to him, before I let him drift away. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I was 74 years old, but I was raising a child again. And this time, I would make sure the cement was mixed right. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. I sighed. I wiped my hands on my pants and pulled the phone out. The screen lit up. Incoming call Marcus. I stared at the name. He was allowed one phone call a week from the facility. Today was Saturday. He was calling to wish Maya a happy birthday. He was calling to hear her voice. He was calling to feel better about himself, to feel like he was still part of the family. Maya didn't hear the phone. She was too busy building the lobby of her skyscraper. I looked at the green answer button. My thumb hovered over it. It would be easy to answer. It would be easy to hand the phone to Maya. She would be happy to hear her daddy. He would cry. He would apologize. It would be a nice emotional moment. But I am not a fan of nice moments. I am a fan of necessary ones. Marcus wasn't ready. I had read the reports from his counselors. He was doing well, but he was still looking for validation. He was still looking for someone to tell him he was a good boy. If I let him talk to Maya now, he would use her as a crutch. He would use her forgiveness to skip the hard work of forgiving himself. He needed to sit in his loneliness a little longer. He needed to understand that access to this family is a privilege, not a right. I pressed the volume button on the side of the phone, silencing the ringer. I watched the screen until the call went to voicemail. Then I opened the contact settings. I scrolled down to the bottom, to the red letters that said block caller. I didn't hesitate. I pressed it. Confirm block. Yes. I put the phone back in my pocket. It felt heavy, but it felt right. I wasn't blocking him out of hate. I was blocking him out of love. The kind of love that says you cannot come back into this house until you are strong enough to hold up the roof. I looked at Maya. She had finished the base. It was solid. It was square. Grandpa, she said, looking up. Is Daddy coming home soon? I picked up a gray brick. I locked it into place, too. Not yet, baby, I said. Daddy is building something, too. What is he building? She asked. He is building a man, I said. And that takes a long time, much longer than a skyscraper. Maya nodded. She seemed satisfied with that answer. She went back to her bricks. I leaned back against the sofa. I looked around my living room. The dust from the chilies was gone. The smell of fear was gone. The Harringtons were gone. I was an old man raising a little girl alone. The odds were against us. The world would say it was too hard. The world would say I was too old. But the world didn't know about structural engineering. We had the deed. We had the money. We had the truth. And most importantly, we had the bricks. I picked up another piece. Pass me a 4x2, I said to Maya. She handed me the piece. I snapped it into place. Click. It held. It was going to be okay. Order had been restored. The dust has finally settled in the brownstone. It has been 3 months since the FBI raided the Harrington office, and 6 months since I first cut open a teddy bear to find a mechanical spy staring back at me. The house is quiet tonight, but it is not empty. It is filled with the kind of silence that you find in a cathedral or a library, a silence that commands respect. I am sitting on my back porch watching the sunset over the Chicago skyline. I have a glass of iced tea in my hand and a notebook on my lap. I am designing a new deck, not because we need one, but because I need to keep my hands busy. A mind that stops working is a mind that starts rusting, and I do not intend to rust. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. They ask if I regret sending my daughter-in-law to federal prison. They ask if I regret sending my own son to a rehabilitation facility. They ask if I regret destroying a family legacy, even if that legacy was built on fraud. They look at me with soft, judgmental eyes and they talk about forgiveness. They talk about turning the other cheek. They talk about the grace of old age. I look at them and I drink my tea. I do not argue, because they do not understand the physics of survival. I am a structural engineer. I know that if you mix too much water into the concrete because you want it to be easy to pour, you compromise the integrity of the whole slab. It looks smooth on the surface. It looks perfect. But the moment the pressure comes, it cracks. It crumbles. And everything you built on top of it comes crashing down. Kindness is like water. It is necessary for life. But kindness in the wrong place, kindness without strength, kindness without boundaries is poison. It is the water that rots the beam. If I had been kind to Tiffany, she would have continued to pinch my granddaughter. If I had been kind to Richard, he would have continued to steal from children. If I had been kind to Marcus, he would have remained a hollow man, a puppet dancing on someone else's strings. I was not kind. I was necessary. I was the steel reinforcement bar that gets shoved into the wet cement. It is hard, it is cold, but it is the only thing that holds the wall up when the wind starts to blow. I hear the back door open. Grandpa. It is Maya. She is wearing her denim overalls and her safety goggles. They are too big for her face, making her look like a little owl. She is holding a piece of pine wood. I am ready, she says. I close my notebook. I stand up. My joints are stiff, but they hold. Let us go to the workbench, I say. We walk into the garage. The smell of sawdust and oil greets us. It is the smell of my life. I have spent 50 years in rooms that smell like this. It is the smell of honest work. I lift Maya up so she can sit on the tall stool. I place a fresh block of wood in front of her. I open the drawer and pull out a hammer. It is not a toy hammer. It is a 16-ounce Estwing with a leather grip. It is balanced. It is heavy. It is too heavy for her. But that is the point. Pick it up, I say. She grabs the handle with both hands. She struggles to lift the head. It is heavy, Grandpa, she says. Gravity is real, baby, I say. You have to respect the weight. If it was light, it wouldn't work. I hand her a nail. It is a 3-inch galvanized steel nail, the kind used for framing houses, the kind that does not rust. Hold the nail straight, I say. Watch your fingers. She positions the nail. Her little fingers are trembling slightly. Now, I say, don't tap it, drive it. She swings. Bang. She misses the nail and hits the wood. A dent appears. She looks at me, worried that I will be angry. Again, I say softly, focus on the head of the nail. Look at nothing else. She swings again. Clink. She hits it. The nail sinks a fraction of an inch into the wood. Good, I say. Now bring it home. Use your shoulder, not just your wrist. She takes a breath. She bites her lip. She swings with everything she has. Whack. The nail drives deep into the pine. It stands straight and true. She smiles, a smile that lights up the dusty garage. I did it, she yells. I look at the nail. I run my thumb over the head. It is flush with the wood. It is not going anywhere. You did it, I say. I look at her. I see Marcus in her eyes, but I see my wife in her spirit. She is going to be okay. She is not going to be a victim. She is going to be a builder. Otis King is 74 years old. The world tried to write me off. The world tried to steal my home and my family. The world sent a wolf in a teddy bear's skin to my door. But the world forgot that I built the door. I put my hand on Maya's shoulder. Listen to me, Maya, I say. She looks up at me, her eyes wide behind the goggles. When you build something, you build it to last, I say. You use the right materials. You check your angles. And when you drive a nail, you drive it all the way in. I point to the nail she just hammered. Don't let anyone pull it out, I say. Don't let anyone tell you it is crooked if you know it is straight. And don't let anyone take your hammer. She nods solemnly. Yes, Grandpa. I look at the tools hanging on the wall. They will be hers one day. The house will be hers. The legacy will be hers. And Marcus, my son, he will come home soon. He will walk through that door not as a boy looking for approval, but as a man looking for work. We will fix the back deck together. We will sweat. We will bleed a little. And we will heal. I am not afraid of the future anymore, because I have inspected the foundation, and it is solid. People mistake silence for weakness and gray hair for senility. That is their fatal error. In this life, you don't build a legacy by being loud, you build it by being solid. I learned that protecting your family sometimes means cutting off the rotten limbs even if it hurts. Trust isn't given, it is structurally engineered over time. If someone brings you a gift with a hidden agenda, make sure you have the tools to dismantle it. A man's worth isn't in his bank account, but in the foundation he lays for the generation that follows him. Here's the final lesson and call to action to conclude the story of Otis King. Life is a lot like the skyscrapers I used to build. You cannot see the foundation, but it is the only thing that matters when the storm comes. I learned that true love is not about being nice, it is about being strong enough to make the hard choices. Sometimes you have to tear a relationship down to the studs to save the people you love. My son Marcus learned that the hard way, but now he is rebuilding on solid ground. Never apologize for protecting your peace, and never let anyone tell you that you are too old to fight for what is right. Your legacy is what you build, not what you buy. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments, have you ever had to use tough love to save a family member? I read every comment. Until next time, keep building.